All right, I think we're live. So let's see how this goes. I'm going to open up my graveyard shift. See if I get my golden ticket. That would be awesome. But I don't actually expect to. So we'll see what happens. But from what I heard, there's maybe another ticket left. I don't know. It's been a while since I heard an update from John Malin, so we'll see what happens. I had completely forgot about it. Somebody had mentioned it on Twitter. And I was like, don't jinx me, man. Because there's a chance, like, if there's one left, then maybe it'll happen, but we'll see what happens. Plus, obviously with all the stuff of the last couple days with Dynamite, everybody's still kind of talking about that, but it looks like Cecil's cash grab has picked up the slack. I think he's about to hit 200,000 tonight. So I'll probably check in on that and see what's going on. I still haven't picked it up yet, so I'm glad I kind of waited. I think I'm going to have to definitely getting that cover, but I was wondering if you might do a bundle with some of the other covers, but if not, that's okay. We'll see if they're add-ons or something. Yeah, that would be awesome if he gets over 200,000 tonight. I'm really happy for him. So yeah, we'll see what's going on here. I'll just wait a couple minutes and then I'll get to the package here. I don't actually want to hype it up too much because, the chances are pretty slim, but you never know. Oh, and I did get my Vyzpzz card from Ethan today as well. So we'll check that out. And I think I might even open my cards from the original Blood Honey. I never opened that pack yet, but I might open those and put those in some top loaders because I'm starting to get quite a collection of cards going on. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to that Brothers card. Well, that should be pretty neat. All right, let's see here. Where is Cash Grab at? He's at 198. 762. So yeah, about 1,300 to go, or 1,200 and a bit. So man, that would be cool. I don't know if he'll make it tonight, but he's definitely going to get it up pretty soon. Oh, and it looks like Cecil's going live pretty soon too. Okay, so maybe we'll do this quick and we'll check out Cecil in a bit. See what's going on here. All right, let's get to it. As I think it's now I'm starting to get excited. Now I do want to find out what's going on here. So yeah, and it was weird too because this package was stuck in Chicago for like 12 days or something like that. Like I could track it and see. So there's the package. I'm not going to dox myself, but and from what I hear, John and his team did a really good job packing these up. So I'm pretty secure knowing this thing is going to be in good shape. So we'll see what we got here. Okay, yeah, that's really good. Okay, so my camera's not really... I kind of just tilt it down a little bit more. Remove some of this shit. That way I don't whack it. All right, so we got the Gemini inside. Get this all sliced open. Ooh, I like that Huerta cover. All right, so we've got the volume 2. And it looks like we've got some cards and a poster. So we'll open this up. It's one of these, I think, these self-sealing bags. Yeah. Some Casmer here. All right, so let's go slow here. We'll pull out volume 2. Oh yeah, it looks awesome. Really, really minty fresh. Oh yeah. Oh man, I can't wait to read this. I didn't pick up the original volume 1, so I was glad I was able to get this. I missed out on the blood bag. I don't know what happened. I meant to get it, but I missed out. So then when this where to cover came up, I made sure to grab it. Okay, we'll just put that down for a second. So I'm not seeing, nothing's jumping out at me. So unless he like put it in here special, it's not, I don't see anything yet. All right, so there's the volume 1. I guess it's like the second printing, right? Yeah. Very cool. A bit of a corner ding, but that's not a big deal. Right down there, you can see. Not worried about it though. These are for reading. All right, and then we got the poster, I guess, and the cards. We're gonna get rid of this stuff here. So the bride card. I don't know if it's gonna focus. I probably have it on manual. And the poster. Very cool. All right. So yeah, no golden ticket. I don't see it. Unless it's hidden in here or something, but I don't think so. Really nice presentation though. These covers are wicked. All right. Get these all bagged up in a second here. All right, let me see if anybody's around and wants to come in here. Hope everybody's having a good day. There's been a lot of craziness going on lately, so I think everybody's finally able to relax a bit after the all the BS with Dynamite. But it looks like Comicsgate is going to come out even stronger out of this, so that's a good sign. Cecil's definitely doing good, so that's good. All right. So we'll see what happens here. Probably just going to pull up a few articles and talk for a bit, and then we'll see what's going on. Oh, we got Fade in chat. We got Justin saying, hey. J Money, smell it. Oh yeah, I gotta smell this bitch. Oh yeah. Inky deliciousness. See, nothing beats the smell of an old comic though. Like the new comics just have that chemical kind of smell, the ink smell, but when you get the newsprint, that's what takes you back to the wonderland of your childhood. That one's actually Graveyard Shift 2 smells a little bit better. And Malin is just fucking rocking it with his art, man. There's some really nice stuff in here. Hopefully he gets a chance to do some action figures or statues or something like that. I think the characters would lend themselves well to the three-dimensional form. Let's try to see if there's any like, oh, here's a nice action spread. Nice big explosion. That's volume 1. Okay, so maybe it is volume 1 that smells better. Yeah, volume 1 smells better. I think volume 2 might be still fresh off the print or something. Man, that's cool. Oh, we got Jay in here. Hello, hello.
Hello, sir. How are you?
How's it going?
I'm good.
Good. Were you waiting long?
Oh no, I think 1 minute maybe, if that.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm still getting used to StreamYards here, and I think I had my sound turned down, so didn't notice you there for a second.
You were smelling John's good books.
Of course. We got Fade Salvation. Hey guys, just have to stop by for a bit. Well, the link is in the room, Fade, so if you want to come in too, you can. Not a big deal. I'm probably not going to go too long. I know Cecil's probably streaming now, so see what's going on. What have you been up to today, Justin?
Not much. It rained like crazy.
You getting a lot of rain lately, or?
Yeah, to be honest. And it's only for a little bit at a time, but when it's raining like crazy, like insane storms.
Yeah, we had about 2 weeks of rain here too, and it was kind of all day, and then you'd get like a couple hours of sun, and then the rain would come back. But it's been pretty nice for the last week or so now, so
yeah,
kind of got it out of its system. But yeah, and Cecil's cash grab there, it's almost at 200,000, so that's good.
Yeah, I picked up the Spite campaign cover today as well. So I got the Cecilpede, or whichever you want to call it, and the new variant today. So I got those 2 covers.
Nice. Not too worried about picking up Dirtworm Doug?
I might towards the end, but not really at this point.
Yeah, that almost could have been its own campaign if you think about it, right? Like,
I felt like it. But I think it was smart that he added it since it was his first campaign, and he could possibly do a second chance after that.
Right. Yeah, and I think because he didn't really have any art for it at first, right? So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't think anybody's grabbing cash grab just to get Dirtworm Doug, aside from the meme factor. But he'll do good on this campaign. I mean, obviously he's going to hit 200, but he might even get up to like 225 or something, 250 in the next couple weeks, just depending on how long I don't see him taking this down anytime soon, right? Like, he's not in fulfillment for a while, so
yeah,
he should just keep it going.
And he turned pages either 6 or 7 to 31 to Donald a week or 2 ago. So Donald's got a lot of drawing to do. And I forget the fella off the top of my head who's doing the Dirtworm Doug one, but he's been kind of doing that at his own pace as well. So
right. Oh, I think, isn't that Scotty Richards? Or
yes, yeah,
the guy that does the animation.
And
he's
Cecil just joined Anna's stream.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to be on here too long. We can just like chill for a bit, and then we can go jump over and watch her stream. I think I was only planning on to be on for about half an hour at the most anyway. So.
Yeah. And did you? I think you said you got 2 packages, or is it just that one?
Oh, I just got this one package, but then I also got. What else did I get? Oh, I just got the card.
Oh yeah.
Card. Let's see. Got too many friggin' windows open here.
Oh, Dan Fraga just joined Cecil's stream as well.
Nice.
He's looking rough.
Yeah, I saw his video from the car before. It was hilarious because he's talking. He's like, yeah, they accidentally took off an extra 8 inches, and then it froze for like a minute. It was like the perfect spot for the video to freeze. I'm like, damn. So yeah, I got the
That's nice.
Vyzpzz card. You're a member, right, on the channel?
No. I'm
Oh, you're
not.
not? Okay.
I haven't joined any of the members. Because I know once I start with one, I'll do too many.
Yeah, I think I'm only on Ethan's, but I was thinking about joining like Nerdrotic maybe, or Dan's channel as well, because I know he does stickers.
Yeah.
And there's a couple, but yeah, like for I mean, some of them are $2, some of them are $5. It's not that bad. I mean, I do like that people are sending physical perks, because then, you know, it's not just like emoticons and stuff like that, but get something to collect.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would have been nice to have gotten them, but like I got a dishwasher a month or two ago. I spent $2,500 on a transmission. I got a new radiator for one of my work trucks. I mean, it's just been complete anarchy this whole year, to be quite honest with you. So, and I got a nice dishwasher too. The dishwasher that I got is stainless steel. It's the GE. It's got like the digital board and everything. We spent $400 on that, and it's totally worth it. Because the one we had before that, I think, because the house I'm in now is 26 or 28 years old, and it is pretty much, I think, damn near the same dishwasher. So it lasted that long. So
that's good. Yeah, it's one of those things where when they go, and then you're like, it's never when you expect it, right? Like,
yeah. And I got really expensive lawnmowers as well. Like I got a commercial grade Husqvarna, which is it has a giant bagger on it. It's a $12,000 lawnmower, and when that thing breaks, that is a handful to try and fix.
I bet. Yeah, that would be a pain in the ass too, right? If it's something really bad goes on that thing. But
yeah, I had the bearings go out. It has a giant blower, and it can hold up to 12 or 13 bushels of grass in the back. And the little blower motor that's on the exit side of the blade deck went out, and the bearings alone, for both the bearings, because you got a bearing on the top and a bearing on the bottom, and it completely destroyed the shaft in the middle, and then the two washers. The bolt alone was like $37, so I ended up spending almost $700 just to repair the whole blower. But luckily, the blade itself, like the blower blades, thank God that didn't get destroyed, because that was like $200 or $300 just by itself. So,
that's crazy, man. I mean, that's almost like, you know, car repair level stuff, right? Like,
yeah,
it's annoying as hell when your car breaks down.
So how do you feel about the square backs compared to the floppies, or whatever they're called?
Like, do you mean like the prestige format style?
Yeah,
like
prestige format
or whatever. Yeah, it's nice. I mean, obviously, when you're doing a 64-page book or more, then it definitely makes sense. But like here, I'm trying to fit it into a Mylar, and it's like a pretty tight squeeze. And this is like a Silver Age Mylar, so it's a little bit bigger than a modern.
Yeah.
But I probably don't even need to put these in Mylars. I've just been putting all my CG stuff in the best bags and boards I can get. So yeah, no, I like it. I mean, I'm pretty careful when I read these things too. I don't like stretch them open all the way.
That's the most dreaded. That's like one day when I saw Anna opening Cyberfrog, she completely folded it backwards. Like she folded the cover and the pages backward to show.
Right.
I was like, it made my butt cringe. I was like, oh my God.
Exactly.
I could never do that to a book.
Well, and didn't she say the other night too that she got 25 copies? Did you hear that? I can't remember if it was on Ethan's stream, like during the auction or something. And I kind of thought she was joking, but nobody really called her on it. Oh, and Richard's asking if I got the golden ticket. No, I didn't get the ticket. I flipped through the books.
Yeah,
I wasn't really expecting it, and it's funny because I didn't even think of it. And then when I posted on Twitter, who was it here? It was Jake at Jake_tat. He's like, I think there's still one golden ticket that hasn't been found. How cool would it be if you discovered it on stream in your graveyard shift? So I told him, don't jinx me, dude. I already forgot about that. That would be sick as all get out. But yeah, it's like, I don't think did anybody else post publicly that they got the golden ticket? Like I know some people claimed it, but I never actually saw anybody
Yeah.
on YouTube like gloat about it or anything. And
I just saw what John posted. That was it. The third or the fourth person had collected it.
Has anybody spilled the beans on what the deal is, or
no? No one has, which is cool, to be honest. I wonder what it's going to be.
See, I wonder because I know if you get the he did like the gold logo T-shirt, and he said he would buy you a beer if you ever met him at a con. Do you remember John mentioning that?
Yeah, and he did it with this one too.
Oh,
so
with
all of them, he has the gold
campaign, right?
Yeah. With
yeah,
the blood bag
exactly,
or the
like someone jinxed you. Exactly.
I forget which one it is. I mean, it was. I mean, what he? I think it was 3,000 packages or so. So 5 out of 3,000 or so packages. Right. That's I mean, someone in.
It's like a 1 in 600 chance or something.
Yeah, exactly. Mexico could have got one. You'll never.
Exactly.
But Cecil is right at $1,000 away from 200,000. I think it's $1,005.
Cool. I gotta check my account here because I gotta see if I got money. I was gonna buy it tonight, but
is it a payday or whatever?
Well, I do like I put it on like a pay-as-you-go card, so I only have like $200 or $300 in there at any time, so I don't overspend it. I don't do anything on credit. I just only buy with cash, and I just put money on it whenever I need to.
Yeah. My friend in where was it?
I literally bought like 3 or 4 things this week, so I'm just like.
I have a friend in the United Kingdom. He has one of those crypto cards, and not only can you put cryptocurrency on the card, but you can also put the euro on there as well. And we don't have anything like that in America. I thought that was kind of cool.
I know, and I can't use like Cash App in Canada or anything like that. Like there's a ton of apps that are kind of either US or US and Europe specific, and I wish they would actually.
I just got the $25 one, or the $25. I know he has the shirt for $25 or $30, a face mask, and a poster. He's got the poster for $30. That's an expensive poster.
Yeah, especially for the size, because it's not even a 24 by 36. Yeah. It's only like 18 by 24 or something. But it is a nice cover. Like they banged it out pretty quick too. I wasn't expecting them to follow up that quick with the new cover, but I guess as soon as they found out the Dynamite deal fell through, then he got Donald and
just Kyle.
Was it? What do you mean?
Kyle did the update. Because Donald DeLay sent him, of course, the cover with all the layers. Because if you ever watch Kyle color, he kind of colors in layers on top of layers. And so I guarantee you, because Kyle was even making jokes that it was just him, but he just deleted out those 2 characters and then completely redrew. And I like the faces a little bit better.
Because then it's like a collab cover almost,
Yeah,
like,
that's exactly what it is.
That's
so
awesome.
Donald did Cecil, and then Kyle did Lilith and Heather.
Right.
So, yeah, I didn't even think about it like that. It's absolutely true.
That's cool. I did not know that. I just kind of assumed, that Donald would have brought it back into Photoshop and redrew it or whatever, and then. But yeah, Kyle's so talented though, man. Like he's. Yeah, Starblades is another one I'm looking forward to. Because it kind of reminds me of all those 80s cartoons and.
Do you know he did Evil Ernie colorings and all that back in the day?
I had heard, I did run across some of his credits before, but I didn't know.
It blew my mind. I had no idea.
Like from back with Chaos Comics, I guess, or something, right?
Yeah. Way back then, and I had no idea he had been coloring for that long. He's a genius.
He is. I almost wish he could get on stream and actually like chat with people and stuff. But I like his face swap videos and gifs that he
Yeah,
posts all the time. Those are hilarious.
yeah.
Dude's like, yeah. Well, I'm glad Dan had a good surgery too. Like it seemed like it was pretty quick in and out.
I had a friend of mine in Virginia Beach, Virginia, who had the same hernia problem. He went to New York City to help his daughter move from one apartment to the next, and he was trying to be too strong, and he pushed his intestines out through his abdominal region on the right hand side, and it looked gross. He sent me pictures. I was like, I don't want to see that. But that's a terrible problem to have. Is that could you imagine people back in the day when they had no surgeries for that, having that type of hernia where your intestines get just pushed out
That
from
would
your
probably kill
exertion?
somebody back in the day, right? Like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine.
yeah, no, that's terrible. I got a beer sitting here. I haven't even opened it yet. So another one of those. This one. Wheat the hells.
I was cheap tonight and just got a couple glass bottled Michelob Ultras. Do you in the restaurants, in the stores or the gas stations, do the employees have to wear masks?
No, funny
They're doing
enough, and it's kind of weird because in other parts of Canada they are starting to mandate some masks indoors. But I'm in Manitoba, and no, we haven't really had any. Like you still see maybe 1 in 10 people or 1 in 8 people wearing a mask out in public or indoors just for their own safety, but there haven't really been any mandates. Everybody's pretty conscious about it here. They got, everybody's wiping down all the surfaces. They put up all the face shields everywhere, but no, the mask thing. It's in this province. Everybody's pretty low key and kind of. I don't know how to explain it. Like, if the government were to mandate it, yeah, people would probably follow along, but I don't know. I just think the provincial government knows people it isn't going to fly. So, and most of the restaurants are open. You can like there is somewhat limited spacing or seating, but you don't really notice it. Um, I don't know. It's I think it's just a matter of population density. Obviously, like in the bigger cities and stuff like that, I think it is more important just for even the social cohesion, just to kind of give everybody that peace of mind. It's when they start, mandating it in places where it might not be as necessary, either because there haven't been that many cases or deaths, or just the population doesn't really, deserve it. But there we got Richard. Hey Jay, you sound well rested.
Yeah, I was tired yesterday. Like I have, so it's been, so I have my own air compressor at the house, and I put air in my wife's front tires because she was complaining that the sensor's been going off. And when I turned on, because we got a Chevy Malibu, I turned it on. It said 110 degrees inside of the car. It was so hot. So yesterday, not only did I have to fix my damn toilet that the installer people messed up, but I also mowed part. I have a very difficult yard because we have a pond, and there's a giant dam with a pond, and then around the pond, well, we have 3 ponds, but it's just a headache. But imagine spending 2 or 3 hours trying to mow in 94, 95 degree weather with humidity. That is a damn butt kicker. It
Yeah, I
really
think
is.
earlier in the year I saw you on one of Frega's streams, and you had your camera going in the backyard, and you were going around and showing like the pond
Yeah,
and stuff like that, and
yeah.
yeah, it
It's
looked
got
really
completely
nice.
taken over by the hyacinths, and there was
Yeah,
nothing I can do this year, man. It's God, it's awful. So it had rained so bad for those 4 or 5 months. Like, so our pond, I have a pool pump, and the pump will suck from the bottom pond and go all the way to the top pond, and it has a waterfall and then another waterfall, and then we got the bridge and the gazebo. But it had rained so much that the silt from the top of the hill of our property filled the first pond and the second pond completely up with silt. And on top of that, for whatever reason, the hyacinths grew like you wouldn't believe this year, and they just burst past. We had a little rope dam with green plastic lining that would keep them from spreading in the whole pond, because we had almost 100 koi. And then I guarantee you all the koi fish are dead now because of the way the hyacinths grow. But it's about 20 feet deep in the middle of that pond. It's pretty damn deep.
And there's koi in there, you said?
Yeah, but I guarantee you they're all dead now. Because once they don't get enough sunlight for a long enough time, and they can't come up to get the sunlight, because they do need sunlight to survive, they'll just die, unfortunately. But we had koi in that pond all the way from Virginia Beach, because we had a pond in Virginia Beach as well, and we brought them. They all survived, but now they're all dead.
Cool. How many were there that you brought?
So we originally brought like 10 or so, about. Like we had one called Grandpa, big huge koi, big giant golden one. But they're all of a sudden, I think 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, we got they're not seagulls. What do you call them? The ones that in what is that show? With the birds that have the babies in their mouth.
Oh, like flying. A stork?
Storks, thank you. So the storks, they would try to eat the koi out of the pond, but they're so big. So what they would do is they would just grab them and stab them and take them out of the pond, and then just leaving them on our deck or in our grass, and they end up just dying. So I shot a stork earlier this year. I killed a couple turtles with the 22, but it just got out of hand. Like, bro, the water, so the lake got so high it went over the dam, or the pond. I mean, the pond got so high it went over the dam, and we had to put concrete in that one section that it overflows, because it started just eroding. The weather was so bad this year, and we've had this house for over 10 years, and it's the first time that anything like this has ever happened. And so,
did you get any like hurricanes or tornadoes in that area, or is it just really bad?
No,
storms?
Just really bad weather. We live by the giant river between Georgia and Alabama, is that Chattahoochee River. And then we have 2 power plants. So we have the hydro dam with the power plant, and then we have the other power plant that's a couple miles from it. And for whatever reason, so luckily where we live, there's enough tree coverage, and the way the land is formed, we don't get tornadoes, but we get tornadoes all around us. Like we had a tornado take out part of the school, took out a 4G tower, messed up the gas station and a bunch of other houses. But for whatever reason, it always dissipates around our little area. I think it's echoes in John's.
Okay, I'll get my headphones on here.
I use the same headset. It's the best headset.
Yeah, it's kind of hit and miss, right? I guess it just depends on how loud you got it. All right, that should fix it.
Yeah, but we had 3 bad tornadoes this year, but they all dodge us. But have you ever been to North America?
Like down to the States, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I say North America. You're in North America.
Yeah, we're in North America too.
Yeah,
and like strangely enough, most people don't think of it, but Mexico is North America too.
Yeah.
You know, but
well, in Virginia Beach, so from Virginia Beach to, I'd say, South Carolina, going over to Mississippi, we always get these midday rains, and they're so fierce, and they'll last like from 5 minutes to an hour or two, but they're awful. They're so awful, and unless you live in this region, I can't really explain it, but they're terrible, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, where I am too, we'll get some pretty crazy storms too. Obviously, probably not as bad as down south where you are, but it's you get like the freak storms and the freak thunder showers, and we'll get hailstorms in like May. It'll be like 25 degrees centigrade, like 90, 85, 90. It's nice and warm, and then all of a sudden you get hail out of nowhere. And we don't get tornadoes in the city, but outside of, there's obviously a lot of farmland, a lot of flat prairies where I am, so there's some tornadoes. And I think we had a level 4 or whatever, like the most dangerous type is, a couple years back, and a couple people died and stuff like that. But usually, I mean, it's more the winter storms and the blizzards and stuff that you got to watch out for. It's not too bad in the summertime. But
my buddy,
yeah, and I mean, you're complaining about all the hyacinths and all the overgrowth in the trees and stuff like that, and I love that. I love finding like just lush areas outside of the city. We've got some nice provincial parks that you can go hiking in and just get lost for a couple days on the trails, and I love that shit. I've been like camping and outdoor type person my whole life, so I really want to I'd love to come down to that area and just spend some time. I've been to Florida once, years and years and years ago, when I was like 10 years old. Mostly California, and obviously like the northern states, North Dakota, Montana, Minnesota, Nebraska. I think I've hit about 10 different states over the years, but it's been over 10 years since I've been down in the States. So
I'm looking for a video right quick, because I got a buddy who lives in Saskatchewan, and I was wondering if I put it on my Instagram, because he was out camping in his camper, and a huge hailstorm came by, and it destroyed his truck and destroyed his camper. But I think I may not have uploaded it.
Yeah, we've had like golf ball size. I think there was a big one time that was almost like softball size, but that's like a 1 in 100 years kind of thing. And usually it's just smaller kind of pea-size hail, but every now and then you get like the golf ball size or half a golf ball. Oh, here we got Richard. My nearly 2-year-old son is your guys' newest, biggest fan. He's glued to my phone watching you guys. Oh, that's cute. I'm glad somebody's watching.
Yeah, well, Anna's got 955 people. So.
Right. I'm past like the whole idea. Like, obviously, once you get to 100 subs or more, then it's kind of like, yeah, you can expect 5, 10, 20 people watching, maybe, if you're lucky. It's all about just getting the link out there and trying to network your, tell people that you're going live and stuff. But we're just kind of shooting the shit anyway, right? So
yeah.
I want to do more some like show and tell streams, or like go through some of my long boxes or something like that at some point, and get a couple people on, and just, if you got any like cool stuff to show off or whatever. And because that's a good way to kind of drive conversation too, right? Is just showing some cool stuff you have and bring back memories. And
here, I'll show you from 2 years ago. Hold on, give me a second. When it snowed down here in Alabama. I got a crazy Instagram name, so you can show it if you want.
Cool.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll hit play.
You seeing it, or?
Yeah. This is where I live. This is my house.
Yeah, you're in a really nice area. It's gorgeous there.
Yeah, it's 3.3 acres, and my neighbor right across with the RV, he has like 4 or 5 acres.
So what was the temperature at that time? Just under freezing, maybe? Or?
Yeah, it was a freak snow that happened one day. This was 130 weeks ago. It was in January 17th, 2018. You can see there at the bottom. And it just randomly snowed, man. And that little bridge right there, my dad and I built before he passed away. And I'll show you give me a second. I'll show you what that dam pond looks like now. It's completely and utterly overran.
Fade says you got a nice yard.
Yeah.
Richard, that's awesome. Yeah, it's really, really beautiful there.
And I mainly just got like my work on here. Stupid stuff I've done. I wouldn't say stupid stuff, but like building decks. But
I'm really bad with my social media. I need like a new phone. I still got like an old iPhone 5S, and it's like the battery's starting to puff up where like like the lithium ion starts to expand, so like my it's actually breaking through my case. I've got like one of these kind of rugged
yeah,
cases on it.
those
So
batteries are
I'm
terrible.
yeah, and I'm like, fuck, now I gotta get a new phone because there's no way to actually. I guess you could replace the battery, but at this point the phone's so old, I just want to get like a new Android anyway, get off the iPhone.
And so I'll show you this one right here. It's from a different angle, but you can see my F-150. Is it showing? All right, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can see the look at the pond.
Hmm.
It's completely full with hyacinths. It completely. And this was like 5 months of raining from October. It is before October, November, December, January, and then February is when it finally stopped raining. But it was just raining and raining and raining and raining. Literally, it would rain seven. I think one time it rained almost 14 days in a row. And
So I guess it is winter when it's typically rainy season then.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you also got to remember it was a grand solar minimum at that time. So when the sun is calming down its um, hot spot cycles and everything, when the sun is slowing its cycles down,
Hmm.
our Earth's weather is more intense because it's the sun is no longer as hot as it is, but you got El Nino, so you have your atmospheric rivers are completely full to the brim, where they're literally overflowing. So that and then because you live up there in Canada, the jet streams were kind of like middle of the road, so they weren't necessarily in your country, but they were in the northern states of America,
Hmm.
and it was just keeping the rain here for so long, man. It was heartbreaking what it did because we had we have a little garden in the back where we had tomatoes, okra, peppers. We had all these crazy expensive peppers that
Hmm.
are like super duper hot. We had squash, cucumbers, and it got just murdered. All of it got murdered, and
That's
it just
terrible.
yeah, it's a waste of damn money, is what it was.
Well, yeah, yeah, I know. It's like when you garden, you got to really take care to watch out for that stuff, right? And try to cover them up. But I guess obviously, if the storm's too bad, there's nothing you can do,
Yeah,
right? Like, but
and just
I was
as
just gonna say here, Forest Publishing on Screen Nova. Would you ever want to do a live auction to trim your collection? Yeah, I think I've mentioned that before. Like, the problem is right now, I still have about 4 long boxes worth of stuff to go through and just catalog. Because my problem is my shop. He'll sell. So he's got a quarter bin, which are like 25 cents each or five for $1, and they're just like loose, old comics or whatever, just kind of like beat up reader copies. And then he's got a dollar bin, which is bagged in boarded stuff. It's usually just whatever's like $3 to $5 in the main bins, and he's trying to make room, so he just throws it in the dollar bin. But I buy so much stuff from him that he gives me five for $1 from the dollar bin, and usually like 10 or 20 for $1 from the quarter bin.
right,
So then and then he'll throw like runs away, like he'll just put, runs of like 10, 20 issues of something in there. And if I see like 10 or 20 in a row, then I can read those, right? Even if I don't collect it or whatever, then I've got something to read. So I grab those all the time, or I can sell them, put them together as sets, sell them on. I've done some eBay selling and stuff like that. But yeah, I want to do some auctions on stream, or probably not anytime soon, just because I don't have as many subs. Like, we could probably try to find somebody else with a bigger channel that would actually get some more viewers and do like a group auction or something. Get like 4 or 5 people that want to auction some stuff. And I would even want to do like draw streams. Like, I'm not even a great artist, but I think it would be cool to just like sit and chat and just doodle like CG characters and stuff like that. And then I don't know, there's more stuff you can do to have fun, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
or make some grab bags or something out of old issues and stuff. But
Well, the longer we do it, the more content and the variety of content will be able to be produced. So
Exactly. That's why I wanted to jump on here today too. I'm just trying to get into that mindset of, if I'm not on somebody else's stream, then I should try to make a couple of videos or get on myself and just do it every day or so, every other day. Yeah. Richard says grab bags would be fun. Well, that's just it, right? Like I can even what I got here. So these are all like a bunch of these were in the dollar bin, but I picked these up 5 for $1, and they're just reprint Marvel Super Action Avengers reprints and stuff like that. But they're in decent shape. They're not, especially if I haven't read these. We got here a Ms. Victory #1 special.
I just unfortunately the comic shops.
These are brand new.
Yeah, look
from
at that.
A couple months ago, and again, 20 cents. Yeah, I'm gonna grab it. Oh yeah, some old Jim Lee X-Men's. I probably have 2, 3, 4 copies of a lot of these. Let's grab them.
I always like that cover right there.
Yeah. So yeah, grab 2 of those. Number 12, long shot. Trying to fill in my run of this Marvel Comics Presents. I've got probably half the whole series, so I'm just grab those.
Sam Keith did a lot of those too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh.
And there's McFarlane covers, Sam Keith covers, another Super Action.
When I moved from South Carolina to Virginia Beach, I didn't lose. The military movers lost 2 of my short boxes.
Marvel Tales.
Yeah. And I had the Marvel Team Up. I had most of my Marvel Team Up, my Marvel Team Ups, the Sam Keith stories there. I had a bunch of my Spawns were in there, and a bunch of randos, but they completely just disappeared during the move. And I also lost because I had 2 suitcases full of baseball and basketball cards.
Yep.
And one of them was complete. I mean, not suitcases like you hold with your hand, but the big giant, just the cases that you would have at the foot of your bed size.
Yep.
And they lost that one completely. But luckily, I still have all my Jose Cansecos and my Nolan Ryans and everything. So
I got rid of. I used to just buy basketball cards and hockey cards when I was younger, and I thought I got rid of most of them, but I actually did find a box recently with a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to go through those, and because it's probably been 25 years since I actually looked them up and saw what they were worth. So
they're not.
And then my shop also does 75% off on back issues. So then I find stuff variant covers of this Thor God of Thunder, which is really, really because it's got first appearance of Null. A bunch of the issues are all key issues right now.
Now, does he not sell anything on the internet? Your store?
Not really, no. I've bugged him about it too for years. I keep telling him he's got a.
Gosh. So in Virginia Beach, Virginia, my main comic shop was Comic Kings, and he was on the eBay. He has almost 20 or 30,000 positive reviews. You can even look him up on Comic Kings on eBay. But he.
Couple of Spawns I grabbed.
Yeah. Never was a fan of that.
$1.25 or whatever, 75% off. You can't go wrong.
Did you get your hands on any of those early 200 issues? The low print runs?
No, I've found a few here and there.
Yeah. For some reason.
$250 for that, and it's in mint condition. This thing's going for $30, $40 online, and he's got $10 cover price, and it was 75% off. Hell yeah, I'm going to grab it. That's my 3rd copy of that.
Oh, man.
And and that's the thing.
I don't have a shop like that around here.
I went a little crazy because he had whole runs. There's number 2. There's number 3. Right?
So is it a big shop? Is it a massive shop?
No, it's not. It's not even that massive. He's downtown. He's kind of in a weird spot, an out of the way spot. And I think with the COVID, like he was shut down for about 2.5 months, right? So he's just trying to make some money, so he's putting everything on sale.
Yeah, that's terrible. That
But
he
he's
has to
still
do it
doing
that way.
okay. Like he says he's doing fine. He even had some of like the nice cheesecake covers. Yeah, so we got like Richard here, Fade, nice Thor cover. Spawn 1/20, first print. Yeah. Yeah, grab those, like anything Spawn, man. It's gonna go up. Like, yeah, they printed 1 million copies of it, but once that movie comes out,
Yeah.
nice She-Hulk run. She-Hulk's hot right now. Like, honestly, you can still find it cheap in bins, but if you want to like flip them online, there's people buying them. If you get Punisher 84 series, let me know. I'll buy for sure. Awesome. KF, I see extras.
I never had a whole lot of Punisher. I would read them. So
Rocketeer.
the thing with me is I was always in military bases, so we would also have other friends who had comic books too, and we would kind of trade
Suicide
about.
Squad with metal. Yeah.
And that's really all I got to put my hands on in terms of like Punisher or any of the non-major runs of Marvel back then. Well, what I consider non-major.
I like this part of this series when Louise Simonson, she became a character, right? Wheezy.
All right. Do you have any Cloak and Dagger runs? I
Have,
love
yeah,
Cloak and
like the
Dagger.
first, yeah, I got the miniseries and
Yeah,
some of the later second series and stuff like that.
the original miniseries is pretty good. I think there was like today. I feel like I can still smell those books, like in my subconscious.
Of course.
What's
Yeah,
another good
there's
run? Because my first books was for my buddy. Well, it wasn't for my buddy. It was he was an older guy. He was in the Navy. But we in Key West we live in I think they were 2-story townhouses and they were like 7 buildings per story and it was shaped like a figure 8.
Scotty Young.
Yeah. See, I'm not a fan of those.
No,
Just not a
either am
fan
I,
of
but
those.
again, it was like $1.25 for a
Yeah.
variant of the #1, so why not, right? Like,
But Thor and Conan were the first ones I ever bought, but they're all gone now because they got lost.
Superior Spider-Man #1. That's a good run.
So I purchased off of eBay back in the day Ultimate Spider-Man 1 through 78, and I also had the white background for Ultimate Spider-Man number 1. And I
Mm-hmm.
paid $715 or $750 plus shipping for the run. And I sent number 1 regular and white background and number 2 and 3 off the CGC. And I sold the white background. This is when the white background of Ultimate Spider-Man was hot. It got a 9.4, and I sold that thing for $800.
Nice. So
And
yeah, paid for the whole collection then,
yeah,
pretty much.
and
Yeah.
then I sold 1, 2 as well. I also sold. To this day, I regret it because I know about pressing now. I had a Uncanny X-Men number 268. I got that graded as at a 9.6, and it has Captain America, Black Widow, and Wolverine on the
Yep.
cover. And I sold. I
Got a couple
I
of
still
those.
think about it to this day. It was so long ago, but I could have got it pressed, and I guarantee you it would have been a 9.8 or higher. And I sold that for like $60 or $70. I regret ever selling that.
That's still though, like,
Mm-hmm.
so
Well, this,
wait, 268.
yeah,
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about, the classic Jim Lee cover, because I was
yeah,
collecting at that time. I still have all my
yeah,
originals. But I've seen that for like literally $8 or $10
yeah.
in bins. Like it's really not, I mean, sometimes you'll find it for 20, 25 if it's in really gem mint condition kind of thing.
Well,
But
back in the day on eBay,
so
because
was
I
that
had them.
back when it was hot kind of thing? And
Yeah, well, it's when
yeah.
CGC first started getting popular. Like people were starting
Oh,
to make
okay.
their
So you
9.6,
sent it
9.8
in and
collections.
got it, you got it slabbed.
Yep.
And what did
Yeah,
it
so it
come
was
back?
slabbed.
What grade did it come back?
9.6, 9.6.
Okay, yeah, that's still
Yeah.
decent. I mean, yeah,
And if
there's like this weird fetish people have for the 9.8s now in
yeah,
CGC, and it's kind of like I get it if it's maybe like, yeah, mid 90s and earlier kind of thing, but any of the newer stuff, like it's just kind of, I don't really understand the point. I guess if you're going to buy it brand new in the slab, like I know on some of the campaigns and stuff like that, Dynamite was offering like, oh, you get the 9.8 slabbed or whatever. Yeah, if you want to wait 30 years or 40 years for it to be worth anything. But otherwise, you're just kind of paying, extra to have it in that slab, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's only like $20 or $25 to slab it.
Well, there's a few books. So, because like Spawn 300, I got cover A
You
and
have that.
J. Yeah, so I got A and J at 9.8. So I have all of 300 and all of 301. I have all of A through whatever and 301, A through whatever. Like I
So
got
the
Alex.
J, what do you mean by the J cover?
The J is the Spider-Man 300 issue. So it looks like the old Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man cover.
Are you talking
So it has-
Spawn
it has-
300?
Yeah, it's Spawn 300, but
Okay.
it's like the Amazing Spider-Man 300. So
Okay,
it has
yeah. You
300.
just got me confused because I thought you
Yeah,
were talking about
it's-
Spider-Man. Like I know there's like direct market, newsstand, that kind of thing, but I didn't realize you were
Yeah.
talking about Spawn. Yeah.
But the J cover is the I want to say facsimile, but it's not that. It's the copycat cover, but it's Spawn instead of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And that book, all right. So I paid $49.99 for the 9.8, and it's already well over $100 on
Nice.
eBay. So they're hit or miss.
Yeah.
They're hit or miss. But I was not missing that cover at a 9.8. There was no way I wasn't.
And it's already a $10 book anyway, right? And
Yep.
it's going to cost you $25 to get it slabbed with the fees and all that stuff and shipping and
so
do you have an account with them or do you go through somebody else to get them slabbed?
I go slabbedheroes.com.
Okay.
And
you just buy them in the slab, right?
Yep.
Okay.
He'll so no matter what, he'll steam and press them and send them out. So it takes quite a while to get your book back. But his slabbedheroes.com, I follow him on Instagram.
Yeah, I've heard of it before.
Yeah,
other people have recommended it.
He's got he is a smart fellow and he is doing it the right way.
Fade's a Punisher fan. I'm going to wear my Punisher shirt then on the next stream that we do because we've got a bunch of Punisher fans. I got a couple Punisher shirts. I got my spooky, so it's like a Detective Comics.
Yeah, almost like a Batman logo.
Yeah, with the Batman logo. And it's got Fox and Scully there. I was a big X-Files fan when I was younger. I would have wore my graveyard shift shirt if I had one. I didn't back at any of those levels, or I think maybe the packs were gone by the time.
So I'm a fan of people, but I'm not like, I don't want to necessarily buy those big packages.
Well, yeah, that's just it, right? It's all a matter of like, do you have the extra money at the time?
Yeah.
Are you really, really hyped to get it and buy all the extra stuff? And like with the Honeycomb box, I bought that first day. I got the Ides of March cover and I got the Honeycomb because I knew I was going to kick myself. And especially like he was saying from day one that it was going to include everything created in the campaign from that point forward. So I think it was already like 6 issues plus, some extras and stuff like that. So I figured, yeah, that's worth it because already you're going to pay, especially once you convert to Canadian and the shipping and all that, it's going to be like $35 practically per issue anyway, right? So the $200 covered all that, and now with everything extra coming, all the toys and stuff like that, I'm cool with it. Yeah. I'm kind of wishing I had bought a second Honeycomb box actually now that I think about it, because he's right, like those things are going to go for like $800 to $1,000 online easily once he puts them out. But yeah, I don't want to jump on and just grab the top tier stuff for everybody. But I think though with Graveyard Shift 3 I probably will, like whatever his day one, and I think isn't he putting that out this week? Didn't he say Wednesday or Thursday?
The John's campaign.
John Malin, I think either tomorrow or Thursday he's going live with Graveyard Shift 3. So yeah, if you guys haven't signed up for the list, make sure you get on that because I think you get a foil card or something like that. And I always forget I sign up for those things, but then I don't go confirm it in my inbox, which means you're not actually signed up. Like you got to click the link in your email or whatever and make sure that it like confirms, otherwise it doesn't count. So yeah,
I should be getting Ethan's. Yeah, I confirmed mine with Ethan, so I'm good with that.
And I mean, usually it's just like a card or something basic. It's not like a big deal if you miss out, but it's almost like if you're gonna buy one of the higher tiers or buy a bunch of stuff from the campaign, I mean, yeah, you may as well not miss out on some exclusive card that maybe only 500 or 1,000 people are actually getting. I guess with Ethan, he's probably got like 5 or 10,000 people signing up for these things, but I still think the print runs are pretty low. Like, even considering the success of Cyberfrog and how many backers he's getting on these campaigns, I think in the long run, it's still going to be hard to come by in terms of like all the newcomers that are going to find out about this stuff like 2 or 3 or 5 years from now. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like you can't really go wrong buying most of these books, especially from any of the creators that have some mainstream background, right? Because once the rest of the comics world finds out, and once all this like CG is a hate group stuff dies down, I think you're going to find, because I really don't see this lasting that much longer. Like, if the success of these campaigns continues the way it has been, eventually people are just going to stop caring. We're already seeing speculators come into the market, right? And people buying stuff to just sell online and stuff like that. So that's kind of a good, that, you know, speculation kind of killed the market in the 90s, but at this point speculators in CG is probably a good thing, because that's what's going to give it more mainstream credit and more mainstream appeal among collectors.
Well, I
But
know it's going to be big. It's absolutely going to be big.
and I'm more of a like a long-term type person. I don't like buy stuff just to flip it like right away. I kind of always plan on hanging on to something for at least a couple years or 5 or 10 years until, you know, especially if you think it's actually going to be worth something. But and I haven't really sold that much stuff. Like, if anything, nowadays I'm just kind of hoarding stuff. I got to trim the fat and get rid of some of the stuff I don't want anymore.
Yeah, I was hoarding there for a little while. When my daughter was first born, Emma, 15 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
is when I did quite a bit of sales on eBay. And that's when I was talking about with Ultimate Spider-Man, and I did
Right.
some really good flipping because I caught the CGC crave pretty quick. I know
Mm-hmm.
one time I got ripped off pretty hard. I bought a bunch of early 200s of Uncanny X-Men, and when
Mm-hmm.
I paid a premium, so to speak, but I was like, yeah, it's fine with me because I'm gonna send some of these to CGC. And man, they were pure and utter trash, pure trash.
So
Like
they
I
didn't
got,
come back in the condition you expected,
yeah,
kind of
man.
thing. Yeah.
Well, the way the guy from eBay sent them to me was garbage. I got a couple early Amazing Spider-Mans that I want to send in, like the Craven the Hunter. I got a clean issue of where he's standing on the grave with the black costume.
Mm-hmm.
That's the early 200s if I'm
So
not
is that?
mistaken.
Oh yeah, that's an amazing. I was thinking
Yeah.
Web of Spider-Man.
Well,
There's
I
that
got
classic Web of Spider-Man, I think 58, where he's crawling out of the grave. I found one of
yeah.
those. That's like a $50 issue, and I think I picked that up for like 15 or 20 bucks a couple months back. And it's like, it's not a mint. It's like a 9.0 or a 9.2 or something like that. Like, it's decent for the price I paid. So
Yeah. And then I got a Web of Spider-Man #1 that if I was to get it pressed, it's guaranteed to come back as a 9.8. Same with that. I mean, I got a bunch of them that if I send them, because what's cool about Slabbed Heroes as well is you can send your books in to get pressed,
yep.
and then he'll send them out to CGC for you. And so that's another benefit of his company as well. Or if you just want to send them to get pressed, and he'll press them for 10 or for $15 or $20, and he'll send them back to you.
That's something
Um,
I'm looking into doing. I've been looking at some of those heat presses, like the t-shirt
mhm,
iron-on transfer things or
mhm.
whatever. And yeah, you can pick up a decent one for like 250, three hundred
Yeah,
dollars
yeah.
and you get some aluminum plates, because usually they have some sort of rubber mat in there to kind of, you know, hold on to the shirt kind of thing. But you just get some aluminum plates that are cut to the size, and you know, put those right on the heating elements. And there's some good YouTube channels and videos that get into pressing. I've actually even just done regular pressing with an iron, like if it's not anything too crazy.
Mhm.
because you're really just kind of putting your own weight down on it and using the heat of the iron just to get the wrinkles out, like especially for water damaged books, if they're warped or kind of rippled at all from sitting in a moist box for a couple of years. You can, I mean, it's not going to bring it up to a 9.8 or anything like that, but I mean, you can bring something from like a 7 up to like an 8.5, no problem, just by getting the ripples out of it.
Yeah.
But that's like, there's a whole art form to that too. And you're right. Like people will pay you $10 or $20 to press something, even if they're not going to send it in to grade it, just, even just to have a nice looking raw copy. If they found one because that's the thing, people are always buying old collections, right? That have been sitting around in a basement for years. And even if they're just kind of bent from sitting in the box for too long, and you just want to get it nice and flat, you can get it perfectly flat. And there's tricks to make sure you don't burn the paper. You just obviously don't put water in the iron or anything like that. You put it in one of those humidity chambers.
Yep.
So you
that's what he does.
Yeah.
So he has a handmade cigar humidity chamber.
Yeah.
And he doesn't use the humidity device that's on the actual chamber. He uses this little egg-shaped humidifier thing that it's like really small, like something you would put in a child's room or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it does. He only uses distilled water, and you got to make sure you never use one that has had fragrance in it. And he's put a couple videos of how he does it, and so sometimes, and he basically gets it back to pulp, essentially is what he does. And then he sometimes he'll leave them in the humidifier. Like a couple issues I've seen him do, he'll leave it in the humidifier for 24 hours or so. And then he'll do pressing. He'll press again. He'll press again. And if it doesn't come out right, especially because he's a good flipper as well, then he'll rehumidify them and then repress them. Like he's got it down. And but he uses an old cigar humidifier with like a glass door that just opens outward like a refrigerator. And I have like literally maybe 100 or more issues I would eventually love to send to him. Like the original McFarlane.
The thing is, if you're going to do that many, you might as well just buy the press yourself, because you're probably going to pay the same
but he's
amount,
a pro.
Right?
So,
or find somebody in your area or something maybe that does it too, right? That they'll give you a deal and you don't have to worry about like shipping them out to them. You can just, but and I mean, I think there's even cheaper ones. I looked on eBay and Amazon, and there's some units that are only like between 125 and 175, because they're meant for just like smaller items, smaller shirts or whatever, or doing like jerseys and stuff, but they're still big enough to fit a comic into. Like some of the ones that people are using are not quite big enough to press 2 comics, and you wouldn't want to press 2 at the same time anyway, for the most part. But you're kind of, like they're almost 50% bigger than they need to be. So you almost could get away with one of the smaller presses that just covers a full comic. But again, I think I've read different people say, like, the heating element, it kind of, sometimes they don't heat as evenly across the entire surface. So you kind of have to flip the book around, a few times, every 4 or 6 hours or whatever, just to make sure that you're not, creasing it more when you put it in there. But yeah, it's like an art form, right? And I mean, it just depends on, it's all volume too, right? Like I wouldn't buy one if you only have like 10 books you want to press, but. And then there's some guys that buy like the big industrial ones for like $800, like from the 60s. So these things are like ancient looking units, like they weigh like 500 pounds or whatever. But those ones are apparently the best, because they're fully, like, you can adjust everything on them, and they'll obviously, if they're still working after 50 or 60 years, they're probably never going to break down on you. And you can press like 5 or 8 books at a time, depending. But yeah, that's a whole other topic of itself, right?
Yeah.
Like I actually found too, somebody gave me a collection a couple years ago, and I had gone through and picked out everything that I thought was okay, these are key issues, these are old, whatever, cycled them into my collection. But then there was a bunch of like 90s stuff in there that I just thought at the time, years ago, was like, oh, this is either no big deal, dime a dozen, or I already have it. So I just left it in that box. Couple months back, I go through it again, because I realized there was a bunch of like Image and Extreme Studio stuff in there. So then when I'm, I wanted to see if I had the original Black Flags in there because I could have sworn they were in there, right? So I go look. Lo and behold, I've got the original Black Flags in there. I have the original. It's like an Extreme Studios #0 or something like that, and it's like a hard to find. It's even got like a really tough cardstock cover on it, but it's one of Dan's early works is in there. There was a Bloodshot. Is it Bloodshot Zero?
I don't think it's Bloodshot.
Or
But
not
I know what you're
Bloodshot.
talking
What's the one I'm thinking of? It was Extreme Studios, and it's got like kind of the sepia tone cover. It's
about. Yeah,
like
it's like
Dan's.
hard. It's almost like a purple, almost or something. Is it purplish or grayish?
I'm gonna see if I can find it on here.
I'll be honest. I never knew about those books back then. I knew about Cyberfrog from Ethan because I have a bunch of Ethan's books. I didn't have any of his originals, but I knew about them because I'd never seen them in my life. Like I've never seen any of those books, and it's a damn shame, man.
Bloodstrike 1. Yeah, Bloodstrike 1. It's that rub the blood cover, so it's got like the heat
Oh no,
sensitive.
I've not seen that at all.
So yeah, Dan Fraga pencils and cover art. I think that might be his first published work. It's not worth anything. It's only $3, but it was like mint, like gem mint. And yeah, it had Bloodstrike. See, have you ever heard of comicbookrealm.com?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I use that to like, yeah, I use that to like catalog all my comics and like keep track of all the conditions and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff, but that's the thing, like you never know what you're going to find, right? And stuff that you thought, oh, this is all just crap or whatever, and then a year later it's like, oh, this is hot for some reason right now, I better like bag and board this and keep it in decent shape.
I like Comic Book Realm because it's one of the few sites where you can find price
right
besides eBay that you don't have to have a damn membership for. You can actually just look.
Exactly.
I like that about it.
And they even have like their market tab, like lets you do, you know, trading and buying and selling between other users and stuff like that, which is kind of nice just to find out. Like it even helps with figuring out like what stuff's in demand, you know, because obviously you go on that tab and if you see, oh, there's like 100 people that want this issue for some reason. And I think it even does reports where you can find out like stuff that's on the move. So it tells you what prices are going up and down at whatever time. So yeah, it's pretty handy. I haven't paid for it. I think you can pay like $20 a year and you get all these, you get the app and a bunch of extra stuff, but the free version works perfectly fine.
Damn, Cecil's up to 202,000.
Is he? All right, awesome.
I just clicked over to Anna's stream. It's got John, Cecil, and Ethan on there. 202. I can't. So lucky. I don't want to say lucky. You know, good job, Cecil. You know,
yeah,
very good job.
Well, luck plays a part. You know, like it's not all luck, but it's, you know, that's, people give luck a bad name, but I mean, luck can go both ways, right? So usually that's my, like with the whole opening the pack tonight, I'm like, I'll just be happy if everything's in decent shape, because usually the way luck goes for me, it's usually on the bad luck side of things. So like I was already thinking, man, my package is stuck for like almost 2 weeks in Chicago. Like, is it ever going to get up here? Are they going to lose it or something like that? Or because I've had packages sent back to, they're like, oh yeah, they didn't want to like send it across the border for whatever reason, or they couldn't like there's a weird thing too, where in America, you guys put your apartment numbers after the street, right? So you'll do like 123 Main Street, apartment 100. Whereas here it's usually apartment number dash street number and street name. So that's how my address usually is apartment number and then my street. And like American postal carriers or the system gets screwed up with that for some reason. I've had packages go back and I'm like, you guys should know all these like postal conventions. Like it's not like it's new or anything.
I know the UK has a weird postal system as well.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? Postal codes versus zip codes, right? Because it's letter, number, number, instead of a 5-digit zip. I think we have this. That's the same thing as in the UK. But yeah, it's like, well, especially it pisses me off when you go to some ordering system and it just wants a zip code and there's no option for a Canadian address. And usually you can just put a postal code in the zip and it'll still figure it out, but a lot won't. Like it's just they got to standardize that stuff. I don't know why we should just all be on like some universal worldwide system. I don't know why they have to have different conventions in every country.
Well, there is a system that they've been trying to make. I forget what it's called, and they have a lot of the nations signed up through it, and it's essentially ran by the United Nations. But there is so much fucking drama that's associated with it, and even the United States here, you had Mike Pompeo has actually said a few things about it. I think it was last year or earlier this year. I want to say it's last year. About companies taking advantage of our UPS system, our postal system, and the amount of money that's extracted out from the United States. And so they are. What you said is what they are trying to do, but with all the anarchy that's going on right now, I don't see that being resolved within the next 4 years at all.
Exactly.
That's but what I mean. Want to, since we're just talking about that, did you hear about the Chinese consulate in Texas today?
No.
So the Chinese consulate is essentially blocked off like a embassy in Iraq has razor
blocked off
wire.
By troops, or
no, it's blocked off with like walls and razor wire and all that. And for I think it was 4 or 5 hours, they were burning papers out in the little center section, and they would not. They were burning evidence. They were burning documents for over Crazy. 4 hours, and you had and they've already released videos from the news because a fire was going on. It's in Houston, Texas, so everyone's like, "What is all this smoke?" It's a giant city, and the firefighters could not get an angle to shoot the water to stop them from burning because of the way this consulate. It's an embassy essentially, is what it is. But it's a consulate, and so for 4 hours straight, they were burning documents inside of the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas today.
That's crazy. Yeah. So they were actually trying to get like one of their, like a fire tower kind of thing on it.
Like the fire truck with the long arm reaching over the fence, but the building was so thick that it just couldn't reach. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, I know you like that type of stuff, so I definitely wanted to bring that.
Well, up. I mean, it's just nothing really surprises me anymore either. Like some of this stuff would be main news across the world in even just 5 or 10 years ago, but now a lot of this stuff just goes under the radar, right? Because there's so much crazy shit going on that most people just don't pay attention, and plus, the mainstream media kind of kowtows to the powers that be, right? Like if they don't want something to get any coverage, they won't cover it. And we know how the Chinese, kind of control the media in terms of having ownership over these media companies. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Do you know who Alibaba is? Of course.
Yeah, like the retail online thing.
So did you know the most recent Mission Impossible film was actually made by Alibaba Publications or Productions or whatever it's called?
Right.
So I found that because me and my wife watched it yesterday before we both passed out.
It's the Tricoms. Yeah. They control Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, it's not just them; it's the Europeans too.
I know.
I thought I had no idea that Alibaba actually was. Besides, because Tom Cruise has his own production company, so I think.
Even like Saudi elements have influence on studios and stuff too, right? And like it's just pretty much wherever there's, millions and billions of dollars at their disposal to be spent on these productions, right? Because these studios are kind of dumb too. Like it's almost like the system forces them to borrow money from these investors rather than just save their own money from their profits and use that for future productions. Like I don't know, I haven't really looked into the quote unquote paperwork or how it all works, but there's almost like some unwritten rules where somewhere between like 40 and 70% of the budget for most of these movies has to come from multiple investor groups. They don't really allow purely American media companies to fully finance, especially these big, multi-$100 million budget movies anymore. And Fade's saying, I hate how Chinese controls most of the media. Yeah, and it's like everyone wants to say it's a total conspiracy. And I mean, usually
It's
they're
not.
saying that because they want us to think in black and white terms, right? Like, oh, they're not paying like 100% for everything. And nobody's saying it's like that with every single movie and that out of the budget 100% of it is paid by the Chinese, right? But when you have a significant proportion, it's like on a on a board or something like that, right? Like if you have some group that controls 40% of the board, they don't need to control 51% of the board. They only need to control 30 or 40%
Yeah.
because
The
they know
only
there's going to be other board members that are going to go their way, that are going to sway to their decision, right? Because they just want to kind of go along with whatever's the popular decision or whatever is the
in
yeah. So
most
it's
in most cases, all you need is 10% of a board,
right to
and
kind of control it and
to
put that
dissent.
influence on it.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
dissent, to vote. Yeah.
exactly.
And
So
what
I
it
think that's
is
what's
you
going
got
on.
companies like AMC. I don't know if we talked about this before on streams with Richard, Knight Richard, as I just said his name. The
People
AMC
know.
was owned by AMC was owned by 66% of that company was owned by a Chinese firm, and 33% of that company was owned by Silver Lake. And now, granted, they did a lot of pretty things to make AMC pretty, but ultimately it's still owned by a Chinese firm. And it's the same thing with you in Canada and us down here in the United States with our meat packing plants. You have meat packing plants that are owned by Chinese billionaires in your country and my country,
Mm-hmm.
and they're the ones playing the propaganda game that you see on the news about, oh, such and such has a kung flu, and so we're going to close down the plant, when we all know it's absolutely not true. And the
Yeah.
they are they're playing a game, and it's not working out in their favor anymore. And I think everything's on overdrive, and that's why I think there's actually true panic. Like today, Kelly McKinney um, was cussed out by the Al Jazeera white reporter that works for Al Jazeera.
Oh, right. She said
Live
she
during
was a
the first,
bitch or something like
yeah,
that, right?
uh,
Stupid bitch or
yeah, well,
lying bitch, I think.
a fucking low lying bitch is what she called her. And I even made a video. I fucking OBS. I opened OBS and I made a 30-second video where I just keep clicking it 9 times over,
Mm-hmm.
because you got Jack Posobiec defending her, and Al Jazeera is a Bahraini. It's owned by Bahrain, and they
Yep.
are essentially strong armed by Iran, and because that's essentially where they get, because they're Shiites. It's
Mm-hmm.
essentially where they get all their money. And even
But see, the
even
Shiites are supposed to be
Iran's,
the good guys,
no,
right? Aren't they?
not Iranians, not at all.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought,
Yeah,
okay, okay, yeah. Yeah, because
yeah.
it's Sunni Muslims are usually kind of uh
Well,
are
the
the
Shiites are
majority, I think.
Sunnis in a
And
way. They're kind of on the same level. Um,
okay. And I probably shouldn't talk on the issue because I don't know enough, but from what I've heard, it's the Shiites are the um, minority and Sunni are the majority,
yeah.
right?
And so
So that's
Shiites
why
are
there's
really,
always
you can
that
call them Shias, Shia.
Shia, right?
Yeah, but they're still Shiites.
Okay.
And they're the more um, what do you call it? They're the more, what's the word I'm looking for? They're the more brutal people, the more religious. They're kind of like the ultra orthodox
Okay.
of like the Muslims,
Okay.
in a way. And
Yeah, it's
uh,
been over probably 10 years since I actually even
yeah.
picked up a book and read about any of this stuff. Okay, we got Fade saying, mind if I join you guys? Yeah, no, if you want to come in, we might only go another 20 minutes or something like that. But yeah, if you want, the link is in the room. So just
But
go ahead and come on in, Fade, if you want.
and the reason why we have so many problems, so it's like Canada and the United States have been completely infiltrated, not only in entertainment but logistics as well. Like in California, you got a lot of Iranians. They own a lot of the warehouse space. A lot of the warehouse space, especially in Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, really the border areas with Mexico, because I think they've been smuggling, to be quite frank. On top of having a almost monopoly on logistics in terms of um, warehouse space for. So you have the Warehouse Association of America, and you also have another warehouse association. where what it is a lot of these companies where they get overflow, like like car companies, they'll get
Hmm.
overflow, so they'll buy parking lots and put their extra cars in just like some random parking lot. That happens here in America. I don't know if it happens here in Canada, but you have a lot of Iranian fellas that will they own all of this warehouse space, and they will lease out their warehouse space to these larger corporations and these businesses that are blossoming, and they will hold their product for them in leased out locations. And so ultimately we just got invaded uh, with by infiltration is really what happened. And hello, Fade.
Hey Jay, how's it going?
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
But yeah, I agree with you guys on the whole infiltration thing.
Yep.
Well, and it's to be expected, right? Like I always kind of find it funny when people act like this stuff, either they think it's some giant conspiracy and that there's no way it's possible for this kind of thing to happen, uh, on the premise of, like it would be way worse. Like if it was happening, then everybody would kind of know about it and it would just be like a foregone conclusion. But obviously when you're invading or you're trying to take something over or you're trying to slowly influence or infiltrate something, you're not really doing it out in the open, right? Or whatever you are doing out in the open is always under the auspices of, oh, this is like, good for everybody, or this is like, just purely business or whatever. But like
Yep.
you kind of have to realize people are always really trying to take over, like even in businesses, right? People, even just the regular workers, are always trying to bend the rules to their whim and stuff
Yeah.
under the noses of
Yep.
their bosses and stuff, and you got to watch out for that stuff.
Yep.
So, and I mean, I'm cool with immigration in the sense of anybody that wants to join the country and actually be a part of that culture, and not to say that the culture is set in stone. Obviously they can bring some of their culture, and that's kind of what the melting pot is all about, right? Is like take the best ideas and go with them. But it's when they come to your city or come to your country and they want to change everything over to the way it worked in their country or in their city. Now obviously, why are you leaving your country or your city if everything's so hunky-dory and great and grand over there, right? Like you should be coming to a country because you want to live by those rules, not change everything to the way. So I don't know, it's like,
Yeah.
and it's such a
Yeah.
touchy subject, right? Like you got to be really careful in how you talk about these things because people will jump down your throat just for having an opinion.
Well, that's what they do with CG. It's the same principle.
Right.
Same principle.
Exactly. Right. Like we can't call out how these SJWs have infiltrated and completely injected their own political ideology into comics. Like they're not even denying it anymore, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like, so where would you come at it from, Fade? Like what do you see as being a big issue, or what do you think maybe are some of the solutions? Because obviously we can't stop people from
At
going where
this
they're going to go,
point,
right?
all I can see is the only way we can get all these SJWs out is just completely destroying and rebuilding the industry from the ground up, because it's too far gone to try to save it,
Right.
Yeah. Well, I also think a lot of people, I don't know if it's been like bot replies, but a lot of people think that the royalty is gone. And I don't think they know what they're talking about. Like in Iran, even though the royals, the Zoroastrian royal families are no longer in control, their families still exist, and they have more money than you can imagine. Like the BP oil, because Iran exports a lot of oil.
Yep.
Those uh, oil fields that they have in Iran were set up by BP in the 60s and the 70s. And one of the reasons why the Shah got removed from power and the Iranian Revolution happened in the 70s was because the Shah asked for more of a percentage of the oil that was getting exported out of their country. And the same things that happening in Somalia, the same things happening in Nigeria, the same things happening in well, it happened in Russia, it happened in China, but but what it is take the royals out. They don't completely murder the families like they did the Romanovs in the USSR, but they just take them out of power. But they still have money beyond imagination,
Right.
Mhm.
and then they end up coming over here and getting like the American university, which was actually created by George Soros, is actually one of the largest um, multinational intelligence operations that is set up in the entire world. So you got American University in Iraq, American
Right.
University in all these other countries. It's a school to teach these royals and these aristocrats how to be high level government bureaucrats. So it's no
Right.
longer
And with all
top
the
down.
Zelensky tactics and all that
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Well, what it is, it's no longer top down rule. It's horizontal rule, and so it's not. And that's why that's what they're doing with the United Kingdom, and that's why they sent so many immigrants into the United Kingdom when they were trying to leave the United Nations. It's like it's punishment for leaving the United Nations.
You mean leaving the EU
Well,
or leaving the UN?
they left the UN completely, so they
The
have their
UK did?
sovereignty back.
Yeah.
Yeah, the United Kingdom is its own sovereign country.
Oh, I didn't know that. I kind
Yeah.
of would have. I just would have assumed they're part of the UN.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
nope,
no,
they left.
not anymore.
That's what Brexit was them leaving the United Nations. And
No,
what
that
it
was
is,
them leaving the European Union.
well, which is the United Nations. That's the
Is it?
same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So the European Union is a conglomerate of all of the what they're trying to do is they're trying to make Europe like the United States of America. So ultimately what they
Right.
really want is a United States of Europe. It's never going to happen. There's too
Right.
much diversity.
Yeah,
And,
exactly. Like all those countries all developed over thousands of years,
you
their
got
own unique languages, and yeah.
Yeah. Even the North Germans are different from the South and Western Germans because they're essentially Prussian, and
Right.
so and Poland is Prussian, and going all the way to Belgium is the Dutch East India Company. So it's like they're a bunch of white guys, yeah.
Yeah,
but
I need
they're
to
not
learn
the
more
same
about
people.
that because, like I was saying, on
Yeah.
my dad's side, I got my grandma from Latvia, and my
Nice.
grandpa on my dad's side from old Prussia,
Yeah.
and or at least his parents were, or whatever, because this is like going back more than 150 years or whatever. Like, how was it? When was it the Prussian Empire? Like 150, 200 years ago, or
almost
something
200
like that?
years ago.
Yeah.
And when Napoleon kind of fell out of popularity, and then he died of an ulcer. Shortly after Napoleon died, Prussia was kind of divided back, and Poland was essentially created. But there was
Right.
two Polands, and then there were in Germany was a complete and utter hot mess. They had almost 200 little autonomous
Empires or
regions.
autonomous regions. Yeah.
Like royal people.
Yeah, I've looked up all those flags and all like the people that used to rule that, and it's pretty like it's almost like, I mean, you could spend a full
amazing.
4 years of university studying all that stuff, right? Because there's so
More
many.
than that.
Yeah.
More than that.
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
sounds like it.
But it's so amazing. It's so amazing. And propaganda.
They just have some really cool like coat of arms and flags, and
it's like
Oh
Saxony.
yeah.
and all the cool like military uniforms that were all unique to them,
Yeah.
and
And because just remember, just 300-400 years ago, it was essentially still considered the Holy Roman Empire.
right.
And back in the day, a lot of people don't realize that Germany and France used to be essentially the Western Holy Roman Empire as well. And it's a lot of people, I think what happens is when they study history, they don't take into consideration that when you move a printing press from one country to another, or when you add a printing press to a country that didn't used to be there, because essentially what happened is Germany created its own printing press. France had its own printing press. Spain was able to create its own printing press. But back then, if you know anything about the coin, most of the coin was printed in Anatolia or Rome, and Spain and all these other areas would use the same coinage in all those countries. And then it started to get really divided in the I would say the 14 to 1700s. But that's when the military industrial complex started to make cannons and guns. So then it really wasn't about the printing press anymore. It was about gunpowder,
Right.
guns. Like so, and then it got into the industrial complex, and then by that point is when you started having places called like central banks. They really weren't central banks, but what they were trying to do is to reconsolidate the printing presses. So
Right.
central banks are essentially a reconsolidation of the printing press because they lost it all. They lost all of that power. Now what they're doing now is trying to get it all back.
And were they making paper money with those printing presses at the time, or was it still mostly coinage?
So it was mostly coinage, but really
Yeah.
paper money. So when Marco Polo went all the way to China, and he brought back because he was essentially a Jesuit, and when he
Mhm.
came back, he came back to other Tsars and Doges. A Doge is essentially like a lord or something like that.
Mhm.
A Doge, Doge.
Mhm.
Like Loyola, who was the guy who was the person who was charged by the Pope, was the first general of the military order of the Knights of Malta. He created the Jesuits, and
Right.
so China was actually the ones who started paper money,
Right.
all the way back then. And then Marco Polo brought it back to the West, and all of Europe started adopting it. And then
Right.
it was really because the banks have been around since which is in Babel, which is Babylon, and you've had banks for a very long time, all the way going back to 3000, 2000 BC.
Right.
But it wasn't until the trade when the boats got real good and the trade routes got faster is when paper money started flowing more. And because remember, you had trade routes from Egypt going all the way up to the Caspian Sea to the steppe,
Mhm.
and then you had branches in Anatolia. That's why Anatolia was so important back then, and that's why the Eastern
And
Holy
that's
Roman,
modern day Turkey, basically, right?
modern day
Yeah.
Turkey, yeah.
Yeah.
And because Yiddish was actually created near the Caspian Sea and Eastern Anatolia, and the Jewish folks were actually the ones. The Jews created Yiddish back then because they were trade masters, and I love Jewish history because I think one of the reasons why they make the Jewish hate the way that it is because um, a lot of the modern people in power don't want you to know how good they were back then
Mhm.
because they created because in the steppe you had white people, you had Celtics, you had Celts in the steppe,
Mhm.
and in Anatolia. Anatolia was an extremely diverse area because it was a central hub for
Mhm.
trade routes,
Right.
and it was people were able to congregate back then, even because if you go all the way back to the Artemis cult, and because Zoroastrianism is about 4 or 5 thousand years old, and
Mhm.
Zoroastrianism actually controlled all of Iran from the lower Caspian Sea, and those royal families, like some of the richest areas in Iran, are the same families that have been in control of the southern portion of the Caspian and the western part of the Black Sea for like 4 or 5 thousand years. The same families, and
Damn.
yeah, and it when
So it's
the
really not going anywhere. Like
no,
those exist
absolutely.
for
Because
time
think about it. I mean,
immemorial.
how old is Islam? Islam is like not even 1,000 years old.
No, yeah, it's like
Yeah,
800 years old or
it's
something.
like I think it's 500 to 700 years old, and
Yeah, like 11 something, I think, is when they officially
yeah,
1100s or
yeah.
early, like, just before the 1200s or something like that, I think
It's
is when it
it's
was
what
formed.
when the Arabs took full control of Arabia is when that religion was created. It's as simple as that. You don't need anything. It's when they started controlling the because remember it's spices, salt, um, wine,
Hmm.
um, fruits and vegetables. Could you imagine controlling the trade route between Egypt going across Saudi Arabia into India? Because you also remember I say remember, I don't know if you know, but Zoroastrianism made its way all the way down into India. So
Right. I was gonna say, like, I'm
yeah,
kind
it
of
was
familiar with
huge,
Zoroastrianism in
huge,
India.
huge
Yeah.
religion, and it wasn't until a couple hundred years ago that it just disappeared.
Right.
And it was when the Shias, which are the Shiites,
Hmm.
and some Sunnis, but remember, Sunnis and the Shiites weren't created until Muhammad actually died, and you still have the people who were the protectors of Muhammad back then.
Hmm.
They're the bodyguards, is how I like to explain it. Those families that protected Muhammad and was his bodyguard and his warriors, like those warriors, those people are still alive in Saudi Arabia. Those family. That's why um, there is a trust fund in Saudi Arabia that if Mohammed bin Salman was to put just 1%, just to open 1% of that trust fund to an American market, it would account for almost $1 trillion. So
Ahem.
Crazy.
how much money is in that trust fund?
That's
It has to be
crazy.
trillions and trillions.
What almost seems like then that these religions act as a cover or like a surface layer to kind of hide all of these
Yeah, they
trade
are.
issues, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like on the surface, most normies kind of think like all the main problems in the world and all these conflicts and everything are kind of religious based. But in reality, it goes deeper than the belief
Yeah,
systems, right? It's more about
Yeah.
the control of territory and the control of resources and these,
big
giant,
boats.
yeah. And like you say, the trade routes and the means and stuff to produce. But and then I wonder now what's going on in the world now, because religion still has an influence, but obviously the secular world has kind of taken over, and it's just going to keep going that way with the internet, right? Like the internet is going to encroach on every custom, culture, and religion around the world and kind of erode those beliefs and those values, right? So then
Yeah,
maybe what we're seeing now with all the strife in the US and in Europe and stuff is just a sign of things to come. Like instead of having religious wars, we're going to have war, like the SJW wars basically, or I don't know what else you'd call them, but just people who are so set in their ways, right? Like they almost have like a religious fervor, right? Like almost like a zealotry. They're completely tied to these ideas that don't really have any basis in reality. Because most religion, like regardless of what you believe, you don't have to have specific beliefs from a specific book in order to be closer to God, in order to be a spiritual being, right? It's almost like they use it as a means of control for people. Like you must believe this specific thing from this book in order to get to heaven. But in reality, I think most people that are open-minded realize like if you live a good life and you are good to each other and your friends and family and stuff like that, like irregardless of whether you believe in the Bible or you believe in the Quran or whatever, if there is a truly just God, you will be able to enter heaven. At least that's kind of what I believe. Like
yeah,
my beliefs kind of fluctuate a lot because I grew up pretty Catholic, and I was obviously baptized and catechism, all that stuff, and then kind of like lightened off and then had my fling with atheism and all this stuff. But that's more out of just learning pure philosophy, right? You try to understand like where did all these religious ideas come from in the first place, and it kind of, once you deconstruct all the ideas, you think the only option is just not to believe in anything, right? But you realize that all of these beliefs come from a true core that most of these religions talk about. And I don't mean to say all religions are the same or the God of every religion is the same. It's more like it's all of these various attempts to try and figure out how to live a good life, how to live a pure life, and how to,
yeah.
possibly
Yeah.
go. And that's what I wonder about now is like,
Well, I
because
believe.
there's, well, I
I
was
don't want
just
to
going to
cut you
say
off. Go ahead.
quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to say really quick. Like, it almost seems like there aren't really any, the so-called values of social justice and quote unquote equality and all these other things, because they're so rooted in Marxism and postmodernism and things like that. It doesn't seem like there's any moral standard in them, right? So that even though these people think doing they're doing good and they're it's almost like they're more evil than anything else, right? And if that takes over, then man, we're really in trouble, right? Because the people, and you already see that the way that they're ripping the heads off of Jesus statues and stuff like that. And like I could, the stuff with the founding fathers statues and all that stuff, like I'm against that just because any kind of history is just that, it's history. Like if your fifis are so hurt that you can't stand looking at a statue of some Confederate general, like they weren't 100% evil. They might have done bad things, during whatever wars and things, but you can't, it's that whole, like, if you forget your history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? Like you should just use those statues as a way to teach your children about the past and about all the heinous shit that went down during the Civil War or whatever. But then they just move on to the next thing. They burn down the statue of the elk, right? Or because that's a purely masculine symbol, right? Like the elk has kind of the pure fortitude of male energy, right? But also being a very graceful, peaceful creature. So they don't want that idea to perpetuate. Because people were asking that, like, why the fuck would they burn down some statue of an elk was that in Portland or Seattle or something like that, right? But it's clearly because that is what it represents. Like those symbols are very powerful regardless of what you actually believe. And then now it's like, oh, they're actually going into churches and ripping the head off of Jesus. And it's like, regardless of whether you believe in Christ or not, nobody should be wishing that upon any, you know what I mean? Like, don't go after what other people believe. If you don't believe it, that's fine. But that's really when society starts to take a downturn. That's when they're going to be willing to pretty much destroy anything that they see. And they're not in the right when they do that. And the way the media just kind of perpetuates that stuff, like it's getting scary. And I don't know, like today I was looking at some videos where it's all like the soccer moms and the Karens and stuff trying to break into the Portland police department and stuff and burn the place down. And it's like, when you've got regular suburban moms and shit trying to like kick down the plywood panels and stuff, it's like shit's going pretty crazy.
Yep.
But thank God there's like here we got Florida Man. Hello,
Florida Man.
Hey Todd.
I was about to get real deep.
How's it going, guys?
Mine, Florida Man.
Going good. We're just kind of shooting the shit.
Yeah. So you know who Steve Bannon is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He runs Breitbart, and Anthony, what's his face, got killed a couple years ago, and Steve.
Well,
Bannon
Breitbart got. I mean, they say he had a heart
Breitbart.
attack, but
Yeah,
I mean,
we know what happened.
Yeah.
We know what happened. He had
which
some
Anthony are you talking about?
I meant to say Andrew Breitbart.
Andrew Breitbart, yeah. Okay.
So Steve Bannon, his mentor is actually a North German / Prussian princess, and this princess is one of the richest Germans in Germany. She was a socialite growing up, had really crazy hair. Her mother was the personal nurse for Pope Benedict. So, and she's trying to start. She has in her 500 room castle that she has in North Germany. Inside of that castle is one of like the most eloquent churches that you'll ever see. And Steve Bannon is completely subservient to her. She like a lot of people, because they see that picture with Andrew Breitbart and Benjamin Netanyahu, they think that Israel was the one who created Breitbart. It wasn't Israel; it was North Germany, and it's a certain extremely devoted family that started Breitbart here in the United States. She prays like 4 or 5 times a day on her knees with her rosary. So what it is it's not a lot of religion isn't going away. It's some of the most powerful people in the world are actually the most religious people. But what the internet has allowed us to see, and if you are willing to read books and pay attention to names like a proper person should, you will understand completely what's going on. It's just like Trump. He's a McLeod family, and his father was actually from a very small town in Germany as well. It's another North German family, and they actually are enemies with the people who started Hess, Hess.
Okay.
They make batteries, Hess batteries, and things like that. And they were born in the same small little town. I say grandfather, maybe great grandfather. But Trump's mother, who is a McLeod, an actual McLeod, her tartans is yellow and green. They used to own so much land in Scotland and other areas, like the Isle of Skye was almost completely owned by them. They own a bunch of islands off the Isle of Skye. And all of that got taken from them from the British monarchy. And they ended up fleeing, just like my family fled, to the United States. So these religious zealots, you said zealots, but they are zealots.
Or adherents, or
they're zealots.
Zealot
they're
has kind of a completely negative connotation, right? But
they are, and then you have Orthodox folks, just like Stephen Mnuchin, who's our Treasury Secretary. Right. The Mnuchin family is actually the word hated pops up in my head, but Mnuchin's family is actually a very powerful family. It's the Mnuchin tribe. The Mnuchins actually worship the head Mnuchin family member, which is a woman. So and it's one of the only few Jewish sects out there where the woman is the head of the family. Mm-hmm. And you also have the Chabad, who is also.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, they aren't necessarily friends with the Mnuchin tribe, but they are working together. And
I know they have a lot of influence in governments, like especially in Russia and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. Well, you have what it is in Russia and Ukraine, that's actually Yiddish folks. Like Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who was born in Czechoslovakia,
right,
which is actually a part of Ukraine now, because during World War II, when the borders got redrawn, part of Czechoslovakia went into Ukraine.
Right.
And he is.
So basically, what you're saying is there's these like ancient alliances and ancient families that still exist kind of under the surface, and they, a lot of these.
And they're not all zealots. I don't want to say that they are, but you have a lot of zealots. It's just like,
it's just more like part of the family tradition, right? So they feel the need to kind of keep these kind of policies going and kind of keep control of these. I want to say policies maybe, or kind of keep that sphere of influence going through various governments of the world, right, to try and consolidate some of that power back into their families.
And that's why they hate Vladimir Putin.
And he's a shifty guy too, right? Like if you really think about it,
Vladimir Putin's a royal. He's
but he's really good at playing all the different sides, right? Like
they took his family out of power, and now he got it back, and there's no way they can take it back from him.
And I think the KGB stuff might play into that as well, right? Like that's just KGB. Another layer of. Yeah. Well, I know, but that's what I'm saying is like beyond the family connections. Then when you have him, learning the spy trade, the spy craft through the KGB, right? That just kind of makes him ever more powerful and ever more able to control that country to that degree. And I don't know how their elections actually work, like whether they just have such a tight grip on their people that they all. Well, I know. So do you think it's all kind of like legit by the numbers, or that they're actually like cooking the books on the back end somehow?
So Vladimir Putin actually worked for the KGB, and he was one of the head guys in Germany, and he was actually in Germany when the Berlin Wall fell. After that position was over, he got brought back to Russia, and Vladimir Putin got designated. He was when the USSR fell, all of the businesses started getting sold off to private companies. So all of the state businesses, like the aluminum, the steel. Right. The commodities.
So you're talking about when like the oligarchs kind of took over.
They got sold to people who have dual passports, and Vladimir Putin was in charge of getting all of that property back. And shortly after that, the guy with the thing on his forehead, I always forget his name.
Gorbachev.
Gorbachev stepped down, and Vladimir Putin became prime minister. And then wasn't
it Yeltsin after that,
or is it Yeltsin? Well, the one who stepped down where he took over. The one who was always
took
drunk.
over after Gorbachev.
Yeah. So he was prime minister, then became president, then he was president again, then he became prime minister, and now he became president, and he was.
And they've even done the flip with Medvedev and Putin a couple times.
And Medvedev is actually an aristocratic family. He's not a royal family, but he's he's a very rich aristocratic family. And you had people like Nathan Rothschild and Deripaska and Monk of Barrick Gold and all of these companies, especially Deripaska family, because Deripaska almost owned all of the steel and aluminum. He was hoarding so much aluminum that he was actually driving up the global price of aluminum. And so
Jay, you got to do like a video series or something on these topics because like you go, I totally follow where you're going, but you're throwing so many data points out at once that it's like, you know, like you could, any of the, like you've been going for about 10 minutes, right? But you could literally derive hours of content from this if you just, okay, I'm going to spend an hour, like kind of create an outline, right? Kind of like what you've done. And even like go back to videos like this and just listen to like your flow, you know, your through points of what you're trying to get across. And then just say, okay, I'm going to take this 1 minute talking about this family and I'm going to turn that into an hour long video because it would be fascinating, right? And you could pull up all the references and all the you know what, you know, just to help other people kind of like absorb all this information, because I'm kind of following you, but at the same time it's like, man, there's so many things to go. Todd, how about you? Like, where do you stand on kind of some of these more quote unquote conspiratorial or like, you know, the weird world history stuff?
Well, I used to pal around with Chester, and I was on TNT or what's it, Tinfoil Talk?
Okay.
Every Sunday, and you know, it always felt like, man, everyone in the room really digs into these things a lot deeper than I do, and so I felt like you know, like I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, and whenever you feel like that, not that I don't, you know a little bit or scratch the surface of it, I never really dig too deep, but Chester always used to say things like, you know, every one of our like 90% of our presidents have all been related to one family and things like that. And I'd be like, man, that's just deep stuff, you know?
Yeah.
That there is something behind, like some curtain, and every one of those people, there's people that are allowed behind there. And there's a you know, not a thin line, but a very thick line of connection to those people. And they're moving, they're the ones moving the pieces around on the board, and we're just watching, you know. And I always hated that feeling, you know.
And the sentiment you bring up too is kind of like what most quote unquote normies, where they're coming at it from. It's like, I think most people deep down understand that, yeah, there's kind of some weird stuff going on and some weird connections, but it kind of starts to get scary. Like if they kind of put two and two together in their own mind and they realize, okay, this, like whether it's something like accessible like the JFK assassination, or like you say, these, you know, presidents all, you know, either going to the same schools and belonging to the same families and their families are all connected. People, they don't want to dig any deeper because they just feel like, wow, there's this giant black hole of information, right, that you can kind of get lost in, and oh, people will think I'm crazy if I actually start believing this stuff, right? So
yeah, I try to stay. I stay away from Illuminati. I stay away from all the presidents are related. Like I never mention those things because that's not how I know it to be.
Well, even if the presidents aren't related, even just the fact that so many of them are graduates of these various Ivy League schools and things, right? And just that connection alone.
Yeah,
right? Because we already know how, like, look at the influence that the universities have over people. Now, it's more of a negative influence where they're teaching them all this postmodernist BS, right? But clearly from, you know, over the last, going back, you know, 50 years back to 200 years ago, you know, it was kind of like the Rhodes Scholars and all these different schools of thought of how to basically trying to train people how to take over the world or control the world, right? And then people are surprised that all these politicians come out of these programs and they seemingly have this huge amount of control around the world and are friends with everybody. And, it's kind of like the classic wrestling cliche, right? Of, the good guy and the bad guy wrestlers, it's all an act in the ring, but then behind the scenes, they're all friends and all going to dinners and all their families are intermarrying and stuff like that. And, that stuff still continues to this day. And everybody's able to kind of pick out the connections. It's not like it's hard to look this stuff up. It's just people want to be blind to it because they want to think, oh, we still have some sort of democratic control over this stuff. But yeah, it's like, I don't know. And there's so many, like, once you go down one alley of information, then it leads off down some other alley and another alley. And it's like, you can spend not only hours, but days and months and years looking into this stuff. And where does it end, right? Like, you kind of, because I even go into the more like supernatural side of things. Like, I'm into the kind of the political aspects and things, but the things that really get my creative juices flowing and kind of really keep me up at night is kind of the more industrial level stuff, like whether it's all of the connections between, obviously like UFO sightings, everyone just kind of writes most of that stuff off as being hooey, but then when you actually look into how did the US military actually react to a lot of these early UFO sightings, you have the fact that the Air Force was created, almost directly after the Roswell incident, and you start studying what purportedly happened around Roswell, and all of the players are all out in the open publicly talking about UFOs being a national defense threat and all this stuff. And then in recent years, you now have, there was the big New York Times expose, right, where the so-called Tic Tac video, right, where now the Pentagon is actually officially admitting that, they had a program post 60s studying these things. So it's like all of these conspiracies, no matter what angle you look at, they kind of like poke their head up from time to time, right? Like they'll kind of go away for a while and then all of a sudden they become serious again. And I think it's all kind of, even though with stuff like that, it doesn't seem connected to all this other political stuff, I think it is, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about who actually controls controls what people think and how things get made to happen, right? Because obviously there's a lot of money in those, in the military industrial complex. It's like trillions of dollars. And in the background, these countries are actually not just interacting on a public level in terms of what they say their policies are, but, having all this spycraft go on in the background and trying to, learn, well, what does this other country know, right? Like in the 90s, even there was a lot of stuff coming out of USSR and Russia, especially after the fall of the Soviet Union, right, about all their UFO research and UFO crashes and things like that, and finding some really mysterious artifacts and things. And and then those people end up getting killed, and university professors end up disappearing and stuff like that. There's even recent stuff in the US in the last 20 years where different researchers looking into anti-gravity, right? And that's not to say, oh, here's some magic technology from a crashed UFO. It's more like maybe there were some crashes in the past. All of that information would be heavily compartmentalized. They would have different labs look at very specific parts of the problem, because they wouldn't want to tell these researchers right to their face, oh, what you're looking at is a artifact from a UFO or something, right? Because maybe they're just looking at some piece of metal or some whatever. They would just kind of portray it like, oh, this is just something we discovered, or this is something we're working on. So they'd have all these independent labs working on things so that they wouldn't really know exactly what they were working on. But slowly over time, they come to realize like, oh, this technology is actually way more advanced than what we've naturally produced or what we've discovered in nature. And, and then they kind of run with it. And so there's been US researchers that have gone missing, working on different superconducting technologies, right, to not necessarily create pure anti-gravity, but at least to shield gravity. There's some famous experiments where they actually managed to reduce the weight of objects by somewhere around like 3 to 5%. And
well, they can make stuff hover now. No problem.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, these are peer-reviewed papers that are still available online that you can actually still access, that people have reproduced, even though the main researchers on these papers are like long gone, and no one, I think a few of them have been found, but then it turns into this whole, like, they don't want to go on camera, they don't want to actually do official interviews with everyone because they've been, you know, shut up by the powers that be, like, you know, probably have had their families threatened and stuff like that. But now, because the technology is getting so accessible to, you know, whatever, just everyday labs out there, like, that anybody can set up, and there's so many internet researchers, and there's so many, you know, resources on the internet, people have figured out how to kind of back engineer this stuff. So now there's, like, even on YouTube, there's people that are getting venture capital to put together their own labs to kind of replicate some of these early experiments. And you watch their streams and they're getting taken down, their live streams are getting shut down, their channels are getting taken down, like, and you don't want to really, like, on some level, I always maintain, even though I'm wearing, like, the X-Files shirt, even though, like, you know, I'm usually hook, line, and sinker on this stuff, I still try to maintain, like, a pretty skeptical attitude toward it, right? Like, I don't believe it 100%. I might believe it 90%, but I still hold out that it could be just confirmation bias, or it could be, you know, my own wishful thinking. But seemingly there are, you know, and you were talking about Trump, right? Like, the big, people always bring up that conspiracy of Trump, his family being related. Was it his uncle, I think, that was a researcher and got access to Tesla's?
Well, Trump's family owns. So when Prescott Bush killed Tesla, essentially.
But do you know about the missing Tesla files and stuff like that?
So Trump's family owns over half of Tesla's patents, and the United States government owns the other half. And so look at this document I got right here. So this is HR 2977, Space Preservation Act of 2001. Let's scroll down to the bottom. Permanent ban of basing of weapons in space. Let's go down here.
Which makes sense, because obviously, like, they want the high ground, right?
So
like, that's why.
So such terms include exotic weapons such as electronic, psychotronic, information warfare, chemtrails, high altitude, ultra low frequency weapon systems, plasma and electromagnetic, sonic and ultrasonic weapons, laser weapons, strategic theater, tactical or extraterrestrial weapons, and chemical, biological, environmental, climate, and tectonic weapons. So like when you see those earthquakes happen. So the term exotic weapons includes weapons designed to damage space or natural ecosystems, such as the ionosphere and upper atmosphere. That's how you create weather, or climate, weather, and the tectonic systems, with the purpose of including damage or destruction upon the target population or the region on the Earth or in space.
Right.
So, like, we have space weapons.
Of course, absolutely.
We have extraterrestrial weapons. And we've
and
had
they just mean weapons in space. They don't technically mean like alien.
Exactly.
It just means like space satellites and things
I think
like that.
that's where people get confused and think that we use like alien weapons.
Right.
But
exactly. That's how they would always like, oh, see, when these weirdos talk about extraterrestrial weapons, this is really what, you know, but it doesn't mean that it's not exclusionary, right? Like they always kind of use that as the cover, like, you know, that there's no way, shape, or form that any kind of like alien technology could exist. But the thing, so like HARP is a good example. Have you ever seen that high altitude atmospheric research project up in Alaska? It's a giant ground base antenna system, basically, where they can heat up the ionosphere. They put such high frequency EMF into the atmosphere that they can make like aurora borealis, basically northern lights, from this giant antenna grid. But at the same time, most people don't realize is that with an antenna, you don't just put stuff out into the atmosphere, but it can actually transmit through the ground, through the earth, right? Because effectively the ground that these antennas are set in then also become a transmitter. And so there's actually been some recent research in the last 10 years where all these different seismic stations around the world have actually had anomalous seismic activity around the world that they can directly correlate to times when that HARP antenna was active. And some of the early researchers were trying to point this out, that, you know, not only can you make the sky glow, and if there's obviously planes in the air, you could crash planes with it, and you could cause, you know, they can bounce signals, because everyone knows with ham radio, like sometimes you'll pick up signals that are actually bouncing around the atmosphere that are from past the horizon, like that are literally from the other side of the earth. But it's just because at a specific frequency, it kind of bounces around inside the atmosphere, and it'll get to where you are. Well, it's the same type of thing. Like they can literally create tornadoes and hurricanes and things like that in other parts of the world just by how they direct this energy. But now it seems like they might be able to create seismic activity.
Yeah,
right.
That's the tectonic weapons. Like they use that. That's how the earthquake in Haiti happened. You know, I'm speculating with that, but
it could be. I mean, anything that seems anomalous in terms of like, you know, because that's the thing, right? There's a reason they put all these, geostations around, right, and listen for these signals, is they're trying to predict when the next big one's going to happen. And if you have some big earthquake happen when they least expect it, and I think even now they use, so not just AI, but like they use the kind of the same ideas with facial recognition and with speech recognition and stuff like that. Like some of these algorithms can actually be used for looking at the signals of tectonic activity, and they can actually start to predict when the next earthquake might happen based on just kind of like the background sounds of the earth. And they actually have very closely, where within a couple of days they've actually put out earthquake warnings, and then they'll get like a small 3.5 or a 4.5. It's nothing that's going to demolish a city, but they've experimentally proven that some of these technologies can accurately predict earthquakes now. And
that's actually super common now. So anytime you have a earthquake that is lower than a certain amount of miles under the ground, you can actually, there's a guy on YouTube who is a fucking genius with kind
of going through the data and being able to pick
earthquake predictions. Like he is a genius, and I'm going to try and.
I think I might have seen some of that. Yeah, somebody was doing a review of some videos where the guy was.
But it's easy to find out earthquakes, but it's not easy to find out when the first massive earthquake happens. But you can always find the aftershocks, like you were saying, and especially if it's along a fault line, you can determine within an X amount of time when a X size earthquake will happen within a certain depth. So that's actually like, and not crazy science fiction anymore. It's provable science.
But all I'm saying is that it's based on technology that even 10 years ago they denied even existed or could ever be used for that, and now they just kind of put it out in the open, like like it's no big deal kind of thing. And that's usually what happens with a lot of this stuff, like with that Pentagon video. Now the thing is, that's another disinfo thing. Like if you look up Tic Tac video, because there's apparently like a footage from a infrared like a target on a gun, like a targeting system on a plane that's used for I wish I could actually remember. But anyway, the point being is that you've got the Pentagon saying this is a UFO, but you have other researchers saying, no, it's actually just an infrared flare. Like it's a heat signal from a jet that's far away. And the supposed like rotation of this object is literally just the camera rotating, because you can actually see polarization of the light in the sky reflecting off of the whatever the cover is on this infrared thing. But I only bring that up in that they're clearly still doing disinformation campaigns, right? So like for years, the government doesn't want you to think UFOs are real and that they're not studying them. Then all of a sudden, a couple years ago, the guy from Blink 182 forms this To the Stars Academy, where he claims, okay, I've got all these government insiders and all these scientists that we're creating this group to study this phenomena, and we actually have active members in the Pentagon and in the military that are part of our team and that are releasing information to us. And then a year later, the Pentagon says, yeah, we're actually going to slowly start trickling out information to this group. So now this To the Stars kind of becomes the poster child for disclosure, seemingly, right? And so now the media is starting to actually take it more seriously. But then when you look at the cases that they put forward, they're clearly disinformation. Like, again, internet sleuths and other scientists kind of look at their evidence and go, no, this is not even what they think it is. Like, if these are the supposed experts that we're supposed to believe and they're getting tricked by this stuff this easily, it's either they're knowingly lying to people and they're just acting as government shills, kind of like trying to cover all this stuff up, or there's something more nefarious going on. Like, who knows? Like, it just, they never stop playing the game. It doesn't matter what side of the argument you're looking at it from. It's all about confusing the public. It's all about just, controlling the flow of information and kind of shutting up the actual researchers that are working hard on this stuff and trying to figure out what's actually been going on all along. And you got a guy like the guy from Blink 182, right? Because he's a rock star, he's going to kind of get the headlines in the papers and stuff like that. But just the everyday Joe that's working on this stuff is never actually going to be like, remember from years ago that, remember the balloon kid? Remember there was that story where the family, they couldn't find the kid, and the dad had built like a UFO shaped balloon, and they thought the kid was trapped in the balloon and it was like flying through the air, and they were covering it on CNN. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Anyway, I'll see if I can pull it up here. So that
But I
guy,
want to say one thing. Damn you guys for getting my hopes up on a lightsaber on that whole space weapons thing.
Right.
what, you want yourself a real lightsaber?
Yeah, who wouldn't?
There is one. There's it's like a tungsten carbide rod or something where they're pumping like 20,000 volts into it so that it glows white hot, and they're cutting through. So it's not like a plasma beam, but it's like, it's effectively like,
in that.
Yeah. So like, I mean, they could do it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they can make like a radiating hot plasma sword, but it probably wouldn't branch out, but like so much for the size that it is versus what you can hold in your hand. So I'm pretty sure you can have something like that, but to get it the length of a big sword, like in Star Wars or Star Wars, the device would have to be, you couldn't hold it in your hand.
Yeah. But still, it's just wishful thinking.
But they can drop a rod of God on you.
Oh yeah.
Okay, are you seeing the Balloon Boy hoax thing?
1 second. Oh, right.
Okay, so yeah, there's a Wikipedia about it, but basically, let's see if I can go to videos.
I personally don't believe in like aliens coming to the world. Like, I don't believe in that. But I know we have secret.
Do you remember this when this thing like all day?
Yeah, I vaguely remember it.
Yeah.
Now,
So like, so they thought the kid was down inside this section under here, right? And that somehow, this balloon got loose and the kid was gonna, hit something and die or whatever. And then it turned out the kid was just hiding in the house, like in the attic or something. Oh. And this little section in here actually has electronics. Like, it's full of... So basically, the long and short of it is the dad was actually researching what's called the Biefeld-Brown effect, right? Where you're using electric charge to create lift across a wing. And this is something that the military has actually studied. And I think even like the stealth fighter or the stealth bomber uses this technique on its wings to hide the exhaust and to kind of create like a lower radar profile. but in effect, like, you could put an electric charge across a conductive surface and give it lift. And if you just search lifters on YouTube, you'll find all these videos of little kind of triangular craft that people have created to do that. So the point being is, like, it's almost like the family created this hoax to get like a reality TV show or something like that based around the dad's research into UFOs. But it got out of hand and it turned into this big controversy about, oh my God, this kid's trapped in this UFO. And it just turned into this, balloon boy conspiracy. But it just kind of points out that, like, if you're dealing with weirdness, things are going to kind of like always kind of take a turn. Like, things almost get weirder and weirder the more that you get into them. Like, I didn't know about any of that stuff at first when that balloon boy stuff happened. Then I started looking in, well, how did this happen? Like, how did this family actually think the kid crawled in there? And because, like, literally after that thing landed and they didn't find him, within an hour, the news crews at the family home, and they're like, oh yeah, we found him. He was in the attic and all this, and we were looking for him, and he, and then they go on Larry King, and the little kid on Larry King is basically admitting, while the whole family's on camera, he's like, yeah, but Dad, you said we were going to be on TV. You said we were going to get a show. And he's like, shut up, son, like, but the media didn't even catch on to it at all. Like, they didn't ask, like, oh, what did you just say? Like, what do you mean a TV show? It just kind of, it flew, went under the radar with everybody. And then years later, people started going, oh yeah, I was actually working with the dad, and we were trying to get like a reality TV show about UFOs and blah, blah, blah. And this was probably just a big hoax started by the dad to like get notoriety, and didn't realize like that it was going to be blown out of proportion like that. But then you look at what this guy, the dad, was working on, and it was actual stuff going back to the 1930s, where people were trying to create, various lifting technologies and all this stuff. And it's like, holy crap. Like, the story is just so weird that actually would have made a better TV show, right? Like, forget about all the alien implications or whatever, whatever the media would hype out of it.
I'm sure he got a job.
No, I think that's the thing, is like, that story kind of destroyed the family to the point where now the dad couldn't get hired by anybody, right? Because it became so notorious, and people just thought, oh, this stupid dad like put his kid at risk and all this stuff. And but meanwhile, it's like, no, he kind of probably knew the kid was hiding in the house or whatever. And even when the authorities were asking him, like, yeah, we need to know where your son is, he's like, I don't know where he is. Like, he could have gone to jail for it. They could have pressed charges, but they never did. But it's just, oh my God, things are always weirder than they seem.
Well, you have magnetic levitation. You have the what do you call it?
Prometheus engine, or the Prometheus project. You ever hear about that engine?
I haven't.
I've heard that.
I've heard the name, but yeah, I don't know anything about it.
Quantum locking, that's what I was looking for.
Oh, the Prometheus rocket engine. So is that like a nuclear engine?
No, I don't know.
So there is an official European Space Agency Prometheus rocket engine using methane as a fuel. There's been a few different rocket engines, like obviously nuclear and atomic engines have been worked on for years. There was a famous UFO researcher named Stanton Friedman, who kind of was the main guy that brought the Roswell case to prominence in the mid 80s. But his early government work was actually testing nuclear rockets at Los Alamos and some of these places. And that's kind of how he got interested in UFOs, was, some of these other engineers and technicians were just open about their interest in the topic. And so he kind of, from a scientific perspective, started looking into the phenomena, hoping that, okay, maybe there's some clue that we can learn from this stuff, and then realize, look, well, wow, this is actually more real than I thought it is, right? And kind of blew open the whole Roswell case when he found Jesse Marcel in Louisiana, who was the guy that was pictured in that famous newspaper photograph, like sitting there with all the wreckage of what was a weather balloon, but it's because they kind of did a bait and switch with the material that he went and picked up. And not a lot of people know that. There was even research where the memo in the general's hand, people years later blew it up using computers, and it actually says victims of the wreck. So like a lot of these Roswell conspiracies, people thought that they were kind of like dead and buried.
With the whole Roswell thing, I believe it was one military arm of the United States military spying on another arm, like because like the CIA doesn't know what the Air Force is doing, type thing, and so there has been plenty of scenarios where they spy on each other in many different cases.
So there's like
pretty
this
sure it
famous...
was a victim in there, and they got shot down, and then they played it up to make it look like a fucking spaceship.
So like there's these famous paper photos that appeared in the paper after the Roswell crash where they're sitting with all this wreckage, but it's clearly just the reflector from a weather balloon. And in the, you know, so you got General Ramey, who was like the military attaché guy, and then you've got Jesse Marcel, who was the intelligence officer from the Roswell base that was sent out to like go look at this wreckage. And he admitted later in life that no, they just kind of switched this stuff out. But the Ramey guy is holding this memo that for years nobody really knew what it was. But then there's some shots where you could actually zoom in, like people found the negatives. Some of these might not be the best. Trying to see if... Right, so it's blurry, but they use like computer technology to try and go in and read what these letters say to see, okay, is there any actual information in here and stuff like that. Some of these are pretty... This is kind of stretching it a bit. I've seen some other ones, but you know, there's parts where people think it actually refers to a disc and victims and things like that. So of course this... If anybody's going to have some scoop on what's going on, it's going to be this general from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is where apparently they took the wreckage afterwards, right? And the victims of the wreck in the disc they will ship. I mean, some of this stuff, it's a bit of a stretch, but it's kind of interesting how people have just continually refused to... And what's this you got up? How to levitate?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is superconducting magnets. So there's actually a lot of research being done on what are known as room temperature superconducting, but it still requires cold temperatures. It's just not anywhere near to like liquid nitrogen levels. And what the newer technologies use, see, that's fascinating, right? Where it actually will levitate upside down because it's the magnetic fields of the track and the object are linked together, right? Like it's a superconductor is where you have pure electrical flow without any resistance at all. And so it almost like attaches itself to the track. But the problem is you got to get down to like minus 220 centigrade in order to do that kind of thing. Some of the newer technologies, I think, are around minus 130 degrees centigrade or minus, I think I even saw one recently that was like minus 97 centigrade, which is still extremely cold. Like we're talking, you know, planets and stuff like Mars gets that cold and stuff, right. But it's still like a lot. You don't need to be pouring liquid nitrogen on it constantly. And it uses what are called quasi crystals. So these are like metal alloys where it's stuff that 50 years ago was cutting edge, but now is starting to become more realistic. And again, it was one of those things back in the day that people were claiming was learned from some of this UFO wreckage. It was not like some random university that just discovered this stuff. It just kind of popped into existence, and all these papers started coming out all at the same time. And people are like, this is weird. Why all of a sudden is there all this research on these quasi-crystals and metamaterials and things like that?
Time to make money off of it.
Well, and it's just like it does seem like something that they didn't just discover naturally. It's something where they found some artifact and then they tried to cut it into pieces and figure out how it worked. And then, like I said, they would just farm it off to different labs to work on different aspects of the problem. And then all of a sudden they realize, oh, wow, this stuff actually works. And now it's kind of bled out into the mainstream. There's a really good...
They can do levitation with acoustics and vacuum now. So you can essentially put water droplets into an acoustic system that has acoustics on the top and the bottom, and the water droplets. And I think they're even starting to even use mercury and these other chemicals that have, about, or if, a plus or minus the weight of whatever it is that this acoustics can hold, and it can be suspended in suspended animation. And they're doing this on grand scales. That's essentially why they stopped doing all the trams, because they know if they spend these tens of billions of dollars on these trams, it'll be a waste of money in the next 20 years. And it's not... It's no longer financially viable, and the folks who have the patents and who are actually producing it now don't want it out in the public. It's just like one of my friends who drives trucks. He's a truck driver in Virginia. He actually delivers certain types of water to nuclear power plants, like these highly classified nuclear power plants and these nuclear facilities that aren't necessarily power plants, but they deal with nuclear material. And like the semi truck, so he was in the military for a long time, and you have to have a classified clearance to even get a job to deliver this type of water to these facilities. So the 18-wheeler will drive on this truck, and it'll be like Metal Gear Solid, and the truck will be lowered underground, and then he'll drive, because it's an underground facility, and we all know how big these underground facilities are. They're ginormous. Like, there's some underground facilities, like out in Utah and other areas, that actually have post office inside of them underground. Like, if you've ever seen the salt mines, some of these salt mines, they will blow your mind to see how large they are.
Oh yeah, exactly. And, well, they call them. There's this thing called DUMBs, DUMBs, deep underground military bases.
Yeah.
So yeah, this channel I'm showing, Alien Scientist. I mean, he's almost at 100,000 subscribers. This guy has been around forever. Like he's probably like our age, like mid 30s. I think. Yeah, I don't think he's 40 yet, but he seems like a young guy. But he's been on YouTube for about 15 years, and he does live streams regularly that get taken down. But he's been like, some of these topics go back 10, 15 years. And so stuff that's kind of coming up in the news now is stuff that he was covering like 10 years ago. And like, if you just want like a deep dive, like some of these videos, he's got hour-long videos, but he's got a bunch of like 10 and 20-minute kind of primers on some of these topics. And he kind of has gone from being like a true believer of the whole alien explanation to now being a little more open-minded to, not that it's not alien, but just maybe it's not as simple as like little gray guys in UFOs kind of thing.
Yeah. Top secret technology that the military owns.
Or even just things like, is there something with other dimensions involved? Is there something with time travel involved? Is there something with like he doesn't really try to get into those theories so much. More, let's actually look at the technologies. Let's actually look at what these labs are actually studying. And all this kind of fractal metamaterials and things like that. Like, let's look at the papers that are out there and just get to the nitty gritty of the actual science rather than arguing about whether aliens exist or not. But yeah, this is a really good channel. There's and he's a really smart guy, and he kind of.
And don't close that out. I'll tell you a YouTuber to type in as well.
Okay.
It's called Dutch, D-U-T-C-H, Sense, S-I-N-S-E. Dutch Sense.
Dutch Sense.
Yeah. One word. S-I-N-S-E.
Oh,
yeah,
Dutch
there you go, right
Sense.
there.
Okay.
And this is the earthquake fella. Click on videos. The program that he has, you can get and download yourself, but it's the way he explains how earthquakes are going to happen in areas, you're just like, what the hell? Like, it's amazing how. So the further out from the planet that the ring is the depth and the size of the earthquake. And
right.
And the guy's got it going on, and he'll go through the geospatial websites. He'll go through the government websites. He'll go through the what do you call it? The NOAA. He'll go through NOAA, and he goes through all these government websites, and he'll explain to you where an earthquake is going to happen after this one happened, and he'll use USGS, and he's this guy's brilliant, and he'll tell you the certain volcanoes, the fracking sites that they're doing, and the underwater volcanoes, like what is it, Yosemite or whatever? What is it? What's that huge park that's an earthquake?
Yeah, well, isn't it no, Yellowstone, you're thinking?
Yeah, Yellowstone.
Yeah.
He'll explain to you Yellowstone, and there's none of the silly, goofy stuff in there, but like he knows the name of almost all the volcanoes. Like the guy is just a damn genius, and this is his hobby. And
well, that's the great thing about YouTube and the internet, right? Like everybody's kind of an autist about something, right? So it's like
exactly. And the guy's got it going on. And back in the day, the U.S. when Obama was president, they would shadow ban him and take down his videos. And I think he had another channel before, and it's now gone. But ever since Trump's been president, he's been free. Like you can see, his views are very high. He doesn't have any of the problems that he used to have. And
he's got a lot of subs too. Yeah, almost 400,000, 384.
He's a genius, man. He's a damn genius.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no, I subbed to that. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, and usually he has a live stream up where he'll just leave it running all day long. But he's started to take those down because I think he knows, like Ethan knows, it messes with his sub count. So he doesn't keep the super duper long ones up anymore.
Yeah, this alien scientist guy on his website, he doesn't really update this anymore, but it's just if you want to learn about any of these different topics, so like quasi-crystals.
Does he ever talk about Antarctica?
I'd like to know about Antarctica, man. I really do.
The earthquake guy or the alien scientist guy?
The alien scientist guy.
I'm not sure. I haven't really heard him bring up anything like that too much. There is information out there about stuff like that with what's his name? Graham Hancock, Fingerprints of the Gods.
Right.
Where, because there's this idea that the crust of the earth may have actually shifted around 20 degrees at some point in the past, so that the land mass that was, like the actual rock landmass under the ice cap, the southern ice cap, was actually about 20 degrees closer to the equator, right? Because they're finding like ferns and tropical plants in these deep ice cores in Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And if you look at some of these ancient maps as well, like most people think that Antarctica was only discovered like 150 years ago or whatever, right? Like what Edmondson or whatever.
Well, it definitely did. So if you look at
there's all these ancient maps where they knew 500 to 1,000 years ago.
Well, in
Egypt, they knew Antarctica existed because it's on all these old maps, and they were actually sailing around the world.
Yeah. Absolutely.
and kind of like the coastlines of these countries match up pretty closely and stuff like that. But so that's the thing, right? It's always about hidden knowledge and, you know, kind of the science of the day that has since, there's a 16th century map showing Antarctica. But the thing is like the actual shape of the landmass is what the land looks like under the ice. So like using satellites, they can use radar to see what the ground looks like under the ice. There's no way to see the land now. But back then it wasn't covered in ice. It was actually like a temperate region or whatever.
Yeah, and the Earth, the poles and the Earth shifted 21 degrees. And because you have Egypt, the temples that still exist to this day, the big one. What's the really big one that tourists go to? And you can walk down the halls of the whatchamacallit. The ancient portion of these Egyptian temples are facing one direction, and then if you look at other sections of the newer parts that are built, they're built 21 degrees to the right. And it's like that in a lot of temples. And I think there's even areas in Peru and areas in South America where you still have some of those temples that are in existence. They also have stuff that is built that's so old that it's built 21 degrees off of the summer and the winter solstice. And because I used to use the weather and the Big Dipper, that's what the swastika is just essentially the Big Dipper with the North Star in the middle, as the 4 seasons. And back then it got off kilter by 21 degrees. And there's evidence of that still exists to this day in Egypt.
Well, and I think there's even evidence of so like different there's magnetic particles in different rock formations and things like that. And so they've always kind of explained that it's kind of the magnetic field of the Earth changing over time, but it takes like millions of years for these magnetic traces to actually realign themselves. And so then they find different rock samples that have magnetic patterns in the rock that don't match the magnetic field of the Earth now. And the only way that could have happened is if you literally had entire land masses shifting 10 or 20 degrees in a matter of days, not millions of years. You know, because like these magnetic patterns are basically frozen into the rock. So there is modern evidence for this stuff. It's just that, you know, they always kind of want to give you the basic explanation or the kind of the simple explanation because they don't really want you to think about it too hard. But then other scientists will point out, well, no, that can't really be the way that it's not like the way that they're explaining it.
All right, so I pulled it up. I found it. So this is Brian Forrester. I'll scroll down so you see his YouTube channel. It's Breen, but Brian Forrester. And this is a prime example of the 21 degree off kilter that happened in the temples. Luckily, thank God, thank Odin, whoever you want to thank, still exists. And if you look in see in the back those pillars, those pillars are 21 degrees off. Because back in the back, that's the Roman time when Ptolemy and all those guys were around. And those one-piece statues that you see that Brian's walking by now, those are pre-dynastic. All right, and then I'll skip forward a little bit. So
do you mean like 20 degrees from plumb, you mean?
No,
like from being
the Earth shifted 21 degrees. And
so they were pointed in a certain, like they lined up in a certain direction at one point, and then, okay.
Yep. So
because they almost look like they're not perfectly plumb up and down, right? But I guess that's just the effect of.
So I'll skip.
That they're sagging or something.
And so back in the day when this was built, the sun during a certain 2 times a year, the sun would shine through this hallway.
I see. Okay.
And then there's many other proof. Like there's other temples that like Hatshepsut was buried at. And the temple has an add-on to it, but the temple which during the day, see how it's 21 degrees to the side, and that is, and then you can tell the older statues versus the newer statues in the Roman, Egyptian, Ptolemaic Empire, which uses sandstone instead of, and so the older dynastic period didn't use sandstone for their statues. They use a much harder granite material, which is like on an 8 or 9 hardness, compared to sandstone, which is like a 3 or 4 hardness. And I mean, you can tell what is the older pieces and what is the newer pieces that was made in the dynastic period from essentially 3000 BC onward. And that's where you get those megalithic coffins that are underground, like at Palmyra. So Palmyra is a area that's like almost 16 miles long. It's not just that little temple that you saw in Indiana Jones. It's like a whole entire city existed there. And this is in the Luxor right here. And if you want to learn, or if you want to like some study for some cool stuff for
I used to be big into like Egyptology and stuff, but I've been kind of out of it for the last 10 years or so. But I want to get back into it.
I've got this is him walking back. This is him walking back here. And you see how it's a different angle. So the Romans, when they built, it's just like Stonehenge. Stonehenge was clearly built way later after the 21 degree shift. That's why still to this day during the summer and winter solstice. So that's a pre-dynastic stone right there too. Like imagine look at the erosion and what that used to be. And then you have the sandstone, which is all built around it. And Stonehenge is actually after the cataclysm as well, because all of its stones and all of the other stones that are in the United Kingdom actually match the summer and the winter solstice.
But from what I understand, Stonehenge was rebuilt.
It was resituated. I do agree with you, but the significance of the stones, like the major stones, are still in line with the winter and summer solstice. But I definitely agree with you. It was put back together because the royal families back then knocked it all down when they tried to kill all the druids. So, and druidism still exists to this day. But they tried to get rid of them all because they were pagans. And so, you had Canterbury, which has one of the oldest churches, the oldest Christian church, and then you had angelic religion, which came as well. And just like all the other religions, even though they worship the same God, they fight over, certain lines in a book. Oh, you got to do it this way. But they're willing to kill millions of people over time, so you believe it in a certain way and stop believing it in this way. Just like the Orthodox Catholics, and just like the Christians today still fight with each other. And and still to this day, like go ahead.
This book, Decoding the Great Pyramid, Peter Lemesurier. And this, if you look online, it's actually kind of hard to find, but I managed to pick it up for like, I think $10 or something somewhere. But it gets into all the math of the pyramids. Like it's got really great diagrams and tables of all the measurements of the different chambers and passageways and things like that. And like it's pretty hard to decipher in terms of like, it's not an easy read, but the basic premise of it is that the Great Pyramid is a model of the Earth. So like they actually knew that the Earth was a sphere, and they knew the exact dimensions of the Earth accurate to about 40 meters, which is within the error rate, at that scale kind of thing. And that even if you look at so like it has a lot to do with the fact that the pyramid is at 19.5 degrees north of the equator, right? And that if you actually take a pyramid and put it inside of a sphere where the apex of the pyramid is touching the North Pole, and the 4 corners of the base of the pyramid are touching the inside of the sphere, then the points touch at exactly 19.5 degrees from the equator. And there's also like the fact that the apex of the pyramid and like those faces of the pyramid are not perfectly planar. There's actually a slight amount of curve, and that curve is exactly modeled to the scale of the curvature of the Earth. So there's all these weird measurements in the pyramid that directly correlate to the modern measurements of the Earth as a sphere, right? So like in a sense, the pyramid was in one aspect of the Great Pyramid was meant to be a model of the Earth, to kind of transmit this information to future generations in the case that there was some sort of great cataclysm, right? So it's almost like hinting at they had more advanced technology, like how they must have had some sort of air flight, whether it was balloons or something like that, but they clearly were able to get high up enough in the air to see the curvature of the Earth, and start to be able to test their theories, right? And kind of put some sort of measure on it or some limit of accuracy on it, and then build that into the pyramid itself, because they knew the pyramid would withstand whatever types of cataclysms happen throughout human history. And I think they even know that the base of the pyramid, like the first 40 levels of the Great Pyramid, were built first. So it was almost like a platform. It didn't actually have the top portion, the pointed part. And so they might have actually done different, like, I don't know, ceremonies and things like that at this point. And then later generations, possibly even thousands of years later, the rest of the pyramid itself was built up. But yeah, there's all sorts of crazy stuff, and it gets into all the chambers under the ground. Like there's this idea that the king's chamber and all this stuff is some sort of allegory for the passage through the afterlife. And like but then getting into the measurements, it actually like has to do with real world measurements that we only know now over the last couple hundred years or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're definitely a lot more advanced than even modern Egyptologists want to give them credit for. And, clearly I'm not saying they had like, planes or anything like that, or it's UFO related or aliens or any of that stuff like people always talk about, but there was some highly technologically advanced civilization that existed at some point in the past, and then there was a grand cataclysm that probably killed like 99.9% of all people. Yeah. And whatever small subgroup managed to survive was only really able to build back civilization based on what some of these ancient megalithic structures, being left around and stuff, probably offered them some sort of like clues to kind of rebuild their math and science and things like that. It's pretty fascinating.
Well, the 3 pyramids follow the Orion constellation.
Yeah, I've seen that. Where they pattern after the stars in Orion's belt. Yeah.
And then the Louvre also has 3 pyramids, 3 glass pyramids, which mimic the Orion's belt as well.
Right.
And the way I see it is there clearly was an ancient civilization that could move and manipulate the size of those rocks that even today we cannot do. And even if we did, the amount of money and the expenditure of people to do it would be unfathomable. So because at the base of the Great Pyramid, just an example, they still have all of their original casing stones. And they have the same building style that's in Peru and all these other megalithic sites. So this is definitely a megalithic site, and somehow they built these giant walls, and I cannot fathom how they do it. But
I've seen, this is an interesting
video. I don't believe a single. This one may be cool, but there's
Like
no
where they
way
use
that
the
we
water?
know how they were built. Yeah, with floating leather from
Yeah.
the cows.
Because they
That's-
have found evidence of some of the canals and things like that. And so they actually have chambers that were then covered in and stuff like that, but you could actually lift bricks from the base up to the top using having all
Yeah.
this water and having them submersed, and then just through regular buoyancy or whatever. And it all works out with the physics. Like, it's not like anything that's physically impossible. And it makes more sense than having millions and millions of slaves and things like that going up ramps. And
Yeah, I don't believe this millions of slaves up ramps, but I have seen this, and it slightly does make sense. But how do you make the system, and how do you pull those boards the way they did, with like some of those stones weigh anywhere between, like, at the temple.
yeah, they're like 6 to 20 tons depending. And there's
Well,
some
at the
bigger
temple
ones,
of the
but,
gods,
yeah.
just to give an example, the one that's always flooded. So the temple of the gods, because back then there was top-down rule, not horizontal rule. So you had to have a place for all of the second-born sons and daughters to kind of hang out. I mean, just like look at that 3D rendering. That's to me, that's pretty. I can't fathom that.
Like, to me, I'd want to
Yeah.
see them build an actual model of this, like
Yeah,
show it in
try
real
it.
life actually working.
Try it.
But it is an
Yeah.
interesting theory for sure. Like, I'm willing to entertain the idea as long as there's nothing physically impossible about it. But
I mean, could you imagine the watertight seal you would have had to have, and the mechanism you would have had to use to try and get those giant sliding doors open for the baffle system?
Yeah.
And I know, just like that picture right there,
mhm.
it's
like a lock system almost.
Yeah, we
right?
use that for boats.
Yeah.
There is a lock system, but how do you have that on the side of a pyramid with the slope? Like that, the slope of these pyramids, it's like, look at it. I couldn't imagine
But there was times when that whole valley would flood, right? So they would actually take advantage of the Nile River flooding, right, to actually bring water into those channels.
Yep. Just like the Sphinx, where the Sphinx used to be completely filled with water as well.
So I think it's a good thing to kind of entertain some of these other ideas, because we want to think that they weren't as advanced or they didn't understand this stuff, but we are learning more and more. Yeah, exactly. And we are learning that they did have a lot of these
and the
kind of engineering techniques.
The Great Pyramid, the Khufu Pyramid, whatever you want to call it, it actually has one of the back sides actually goes inward. And so it actually has more than 4 sides. It has 6 or 8 sides. I forget what it is. I think it's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. 5 or 6 sides. It's not perfectly square, the pyramid. 6 sides. Yeah, 6.
Yeah, but otherwise, the only other theory, right, is that you almost use as many bricks as contained in the pyramid to create a giant ramp with a slope that's shallow enough that you can literally just pull the blocks up, right? And then as you get higher, you're probably pulling some of these bricks off of the ramp to use to build the pyramid. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, people have actually tried to reconstruct some of this stuff, and none of it is really impossible. It's just a matter of scale. Like, how long do you want to allow them to have to build the pyramid? How many people do you want to allow them to have to build the pyramid? Like, there's all these variables in the equation, and yeah, you change one variable and it's going to change something else about it, right? So, and because they know so little about like exactly how long did it take, and you can have, it's like a Drake equation, right? Like, you can plug all sorts of different numbers in and come up with all sorts of different theories, but nobody's really for sure on any of these scenarios.
And those things are so big. They're so big.
Exactly.
All right, I'm gonna call it a night, you guys.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna end it too. We've been going for like 3 hours now.
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
It's gonna
There's only supposed to be 30 minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes to an hour, but you know, it's like you get talking and you start having fun and it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm
it was
talking about
definitely-
random.
And keep silent.
What's that, Todd?
I said I'm glad I could come by and be silent.
Oh yeah,
Were
it's
you-
all good, man. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's all good.
And
We're,
it was definitely informative, I can say that much.
well, you know, at least you got something out of it. I mean, who knows if anybody else will get anything. I mean, this, like a lot of live streams, I'm sure it'll just sit on the channel and go into the background. I'm going to be trying to do more stuff live probably every other day or so. So we'll, yeah, next time I'll have you guys on and we can kind of look at some more of the Comicsgate projects and stuff like that. But
Well, what's good is you also get view hours too, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And
so-
usually I would just be sitting here looking at this stuff on my own anyway, right? So it's kind of cool to have a discussion while we're looking at this stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All
And
right,
then
so I'm
next time
gonna.
Next time I can show some Senate.gov MK Ultra files.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, like I said, you know, if we want to do like a strange topics type podcast or stream or whatever, let's do that. Let's pick a night or something like that, and then we can kind of get the word out and try to find some other guests and people that want to come on and talk about this stuff, and we can try to keep it on, you know, 1 or 2 topics or something like that, and maybe just keep it to an hour or two, and go from there.
All right.
All right. Well, I'm going to end the stream, and